executive session. My apologies, we're a few minutes behind. We're going to get back into our regular board meeting schedule and our agenda. We'll start off by the presentation of the colors.
Color guard, attention, carry, color. Forward, march.
We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glow, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Forward, march. Color guards, hold. Order, color.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item number 8, which is the approval of our minutes for our regular board meeting from October 21st of 2021. We need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or changes? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Item 9 will be the approval of minutes of the special board meeting for November 3rd of 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comment? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to our presentations, item B, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Josh Kaufman, our Director of Fine Arts and Extracurriculars.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. I'd first like to begin by thanking Rose Early and members of our JROTC Color Guard for presenting the colors and the national anthem this evening. This past weekend, the Live Oaks Junior ROTC Wolfpack Battalion, consisting of approximately 43 cadets from Milford High School, traveled to Molina, Georgia to compete in the National Raider competition. More than 3,500 cadets competed, representing 74 schools from 21 states. And tonight, we have several members of those teams that competed this past weekend. I ask that they please step forward as I share with you the results from their national competition. First, we have our co-ed team. Our co-ed team placed 14th in the entire nation. Congratulations to our co-ed team. Well done. Our all-male team placed 4th in the physical team test and overall placed 9th in the nation. And if we have any members of our all-female team, if you could please come forward. Our all-female team placed 2nd place in the physical team test, 1st place in the 5K mountain run, 1st place in the one-rope bridge, 1st place in the gauntlet, and I am proud to share with you that they were the overall national champions at the National Raider competition. Cadets, young men and women, on behalf of your school, this community, and those who support you, well done. We are extremely proud of you. Thank you for your service. I would now like to ask Mrs. Megan Davidson to share a special tribute.
I'm Megan Davidson, Director of Special Ed, and also the daughter of a TED-Offensive survivor. In the back corner, we have America's White Table, and I'm going to share with you the meaning of America's White Table. The table is round to show our everlasting devotion and concern for our fallen and missing comrades. The cloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their motives when answering to the call of duty. The single red rose, displayed in a vase, reminds us of the life, the blood that was shed, and their loved ones and friends who keep the faith and await answers. The vase is tied with a red ribbon, symbol of our commitment and continued determination to account for our missing. A slice of lemon on the plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. The salt is to remind us of the tears endured by those missing and their families who will seek answers. The black napkin is a reminder of the isolation, deprivation, and cruel fate of our missing. The Bible represents the strength gained through faith to sustain those lost from our country, founded as one nation under God. The glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to share this evening with us. The chair is empty and tilted. They are not here, and they will remain so until they return or are accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Veterans Day is always a special day here in the Milford schools. This is always a special board meeting for us as well. We're grateful and honored to have all of our esteemed guests, certainly our veterans. Thank you, Megan, for also telling us about your father. I'd also like to recognize my own father and grandfather who have since passed, both served Army, United States Air Force, World War II, and during the Vietnam era. So with that, I would like to show the Veterans Day in our building, so we do have a nice video for you, and we'll start with that. All right, thank you, Wendy, for putting that together for us. It would not be a Veterans Day in a board meeting without Mr. Knapp. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Knapp, who will speak to us this evening about the Korean War.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to be here on Veterans Day, to share a little bit about you about the tremendous history and sacrifices, contributions in our veterans of the war. It was dawn, June 25, 1950. 135,000 North Korean soldiers slashed across the border into the south, starting a war that would eventually kill 4 million. Few Americans had ever heard of Korea before, and fewer still pointed out on the map. Louis Lastly was in Japan when the war broke out. He was a member of the 27th Infantry Wolfhounds. He was in the northern part of Japan and was ordered to take his gun. Thanks. Louis was, with the rest of his men, ordered to grab his gun, his knapsack, get into a train and head south to Tokyo. He wasn't told the reason why. He stopped at a train depot, looked out the window, and there were Japanese people running around. He asked them, "What's going on?" And they said, "It's a war. It's a war." "Where's the war?" She replied, "In Korea." He turned around and looked at his buddy and said at the same time, "Where the hell is Korea?" We decided to defend our allies against the communist aggression and thought it would be a very simple matter of a week or two at the most, and we would be back at home. It wasn't to be. We were totally unprepared for that war. Our rifle barrels were so overused that they couldn't shoot straight. Bazooka shells bounced off the Russian T-34 tanks. Radios from the ground couldn't communicate with airplanes trying to provide close air support. And ammunition blew up in our men's faces. It was a disaster. We were pushed down the entire peninsula to near the end and realized that maybe we were going to face another Dunkirk. But we held on. Men like Louis Lastly was there at the mountains, and rugged mountains, temperatures spiking to 100 degrees above zero, and fighting day and night, night and day, transported from one place to the other, and he told me, he said he never had an idea where he was during that whole time. But we held until there was enough time to bring in new troops to start the offensive. Douglas MacArthur fashioned the Incheon landing, which went behind the enemy. The 8th Army broke out and forced the Koreans back into North Korea. And then we followed them all the way up to the border of the Yalu River with China. The top brass, MacArthur included, discounted credible intelligence reports that the Chinese were massing along the border. He also discounted reasonable diplomatic warnings of the same matter, that the Chinese are getting ready to come in. The temperatures dropped in Korea to 20 degrees below zero, to 30 to 40. Stiff winds blowing in from Siberia brought in terrible and almost unbelievable wind chills. And then a whole foot of snow fell. And none of our men had winter uniforms. On Thanksgiving Day, 1950, while Americans sat down to have their dinner in Korea, 300,000 Chinese struck across the river, catching us totally by surprise. On the Western Front, the 2nd Infantry Division was mauled, prompting the Walter Winchell to write, the journalist Walter Winchell to write, "If you have a son in Korea, write to him. If you have a son in the 2nd Infantry Division, pray for him." The Allies took a battering on the Eastern Front as well, known as the Chosin Reservoir. It was so cold that the morphine froze, and they had to put it in the mouth, the syringes in their mouth to keep it warm so they could deliver it to the fallen. One guy talked about how hard a time it was to eat a can of peas. It was frozen so solid that he was grinding, trying to get at least one pea out. He finally got a pea and broke his tooth when he chomped on it. Hundreds, if not thousands, of men suffered from frostbite because it was so cold. Louis Lastly was among them. 245 Marines of Fox Company 7th Infantry Regiment were told to hold on to the strategic pass at Tacton as long as they possibly could in order to give the main body a chance to withdraw. When they got there, the ground was frozen so solid that they could not dig into the trenches or into any foxholes. And as a result, they had to use whatever they could for protection, which in this case was the bodies of the frozen bodies of the Chinese that they had killed, and they put them up like sandbags. Those men held out as long as it took, fighting at least 10,000 Chinese, 245 men, 10,000 Chinese. And when they left, they suffered 75% casualties. Our men were pushed back down the peninsula again like it was a repeat of summer until we got a miracle in the name of General Matthew B. Ridgway, who was a famous commander of the 82nd Air Force Division during World War II. He reestablished the line, gave the men morale, and they fought back until they got to the northern part of South Korea, and there they stopped. We started hearing the war continued another 2 years, and we heard of places like Chorwin Valley, Old Baldy, Pork Chop Hill, Bloody Nose, and the war had devolved into really a World War I, where they were fighting from trenches and fighting holes. Men would go out at night on patrols in the no man's land. They had no GPS. They relied on primitive devices like a compass and maps as they went through. It took 2 years to negotiate an armistice. An armistice is a ceasefire. It's not a peace treaty. So they signed the armistice, and they were left, and that was on July 27, 1953. And we still have not signed a peace treaty, so we are still technically at war with North Korea, and we have 28,500 troops there today. Somebody tells you that the longest war was in Afghanistan, it's not true. It's Korea, over 71 years. We're still fighting that war. The Korean war vets came home. There were no speeches, no parades. They weren't even given the dignity of having what they were involved in called a war. It was referred to as the Korea incident, the Korean conflict, and worst of all, the Korean police action. If you talk to a Korean war veteran today, even though it's been 70 years since it's ended, he will tell you, if you ask him what he would think about the Korean police action, he would tell you, police action, hell, it was a war. It was a war. And so it was. 36,000 Americans were killed in that 3-year war. 103,000 were wounded. Nearly 8,000 were still missing in action, many of whom were dead POWs who were beaten, starved, and brainwashed by the enemy. When they came home, when they went to work, got an education, contributed to the community, suffered PTSD, survivor's guilt, and physical wounds for the rest of their lives in silence. Today, most of their families don't even know what they went through. 600 Korean War veterans are dying every day in the United States. I think they've deserved our recognition, our admiration, and our gratitude. Larry?
Well, first of all, as I always like to say, following Gary Knepp as a speaker is a bit like taking a knife to a gunfight, but bear with me. When asked by Gary to help research how many men from Milford served in the military during the Korean War, I thought, where do you start looking for something that happened 70 plus years ago? Then I remembered research for World War II. The old Miami Valley News, which was a weekly publication at the time for Claremont County, was my source. During World War II, a column appeared every week with names of locals serving. It was called With Our Soldier Boys. So looking a few years later, I found during the Korean War they had another column. This time it was called Around the Corner with the Boys. Featured local news, letters from servicemen, and et cetera. So the search began, looking through old drawflams. Those are Milford yearbooks, in case anybody here didn't attend Milford schools. Census records, cemetery records, et cetera. I was able to find a total of 118 names. Of those, 32 served in Korea, 62 were at different locations around the world. These 94 men all graduated or attended Milford High School for at least 1 year. I could find no record of the remaining 24 having attended Milford High School. Having said all that, all these men did serve and deserve our heartfelt thanks. I'll read the names of the 32 who served in the Korean Theater of Operations. Now, please keep in mind, this may not be all who served, and if any have knowledge of any other Korean War vets who attended Milford for at least 1 year, whether it was in the Korean country itself, at home, or abroad somewhere else, please contact the school administration office. They'd like to get information from you. So here we go. Gary just spoke about the Chosin Reservoir. The first guy on my list is Robert Brown. He was a graduate of 1949. He was in the Army and received a Purple Heart for his actions at the Chosin Reservoir. Ted C. Van Pelt, 1944 graduate in the Navy on USS Dixie. Don Burnett, graduate in 1949 of the Navy, was on the same ship. Small world deal there. Donald Chandler Sr., graduate 1943, was in the Navy during World War II and in Korea. Don was the commander of the local American Legion post, as well as his father and his son Donnie, and all three were in the Navy. Next we have Werner H. Sellers Jr., 1947 grad, Army. Raymond Reilly, 1946 grad, Army, received a Purple Heart. Robert Taylor, 1947 Army. Robert H. Reed, 1948 Navy. Ralph Nash, 1946 Army. Edward Smithson, 1946 Army. Ralph Meineke attended Milford High School, was in the Army. Walker Eugene Fessmeyer, 1947 Army. Charles Kemeter, 1951 Army. Loring Mackey Myers, 1950 Army, received a Purple Heart. Edward Bosch, 1950 Army. Gene Fritz was a junior in 1949, served in the Army. Stanley Reeve, graduate 1949 Navy. Robert H. Scott, 1948 Marine Corps. Gene Seiler, 1947 Army. Lawrence Knipp, 1952 Army. George A. Thompson, 1951 Army. Donald L. Watkins, 1949 Army. Walter Elliott Jr. was a freshman in 1945. He was an Army combat engineer and proud to say my uncle. Ralph Omer, sophomore in 1943 Army. Edward Knipp, 1950 Army. Richard Bickle, attended 1 year in 1947, was in the Army. Herman Freeman, 1941 grad, Army Air Corps, World War II, United States Air Force in Korea. Interesting story about Herman Freeman. I have not documented it in a letter, newspaper, or anything, but tons of people remember this happening. Some point in time, Herman Freeman flew a plane underneath the Milford Bridge. I got to find out when this was. It really did happen. Raymond Meineke was a sophomore in 1947 in the Army. Lester Leroy Boggs, 1951 Navy. Eldred Sarver was a freshman in 1952 Army. And last, and certainly not least, is my friend Joseph M. Fitzwater, Jr. Joe graduated in 1942, served in World War II and Korea. He is currently 97 years young. He is the oldest living World War II and Korean veteran at our post. And ironically, his father, Joseph Sr., at the time of his passing, was the oldest member of the Legion from World War I. So that is all that we're in Korea, but one more thing, please. Gary Knepp will tell you that he never served in the military. I'll tell you this. He has served veterans time and again with his research and books on the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. For his book on the 39 Claremont County men who were KIA, his book Beyond the Names, he actually made 2 trips to Vietnam to research, to try to get to as close to the spot where these men gave their all. That's dedication. So to you, Gary, a big salute and a thank you. God bless. So God bless all the veterans and their families, past, present, future, and God bless the United States of America.
Not finished with me yet. In 2010, 4 men, all Korean War veterans, all residents of the school district, and now all 4 deceased, came together to form an organization known as Korean War Veterans United. Their purpose was to develop a memorial for the Korean War veterans. That's Louis Lastly that I've been talking about. Louis grew up in followed Tennessee and left school early to go into World War II, and also was in Korea. Milford High School a few years ago presented him with a diploma. Next. That was a guy I knew pretty well, was my dad, William Neff. He was in the Army. Ralph Filardo, Army. And Robert Sterling, the Air Force. These were the 4 guys that came together to form this group to do the memorial. This is the dedication in 2010 of when the groundbreaking was made. Look, not Louis Lastly is on the left, Robert Sterling's on the right. Okay. Ralph Filardo on the left, Robert Sterling in the middle, Bill Neff on the right, again at the day of the dedication of the groundbreaking. Next. The man in the middle is Dr. Hong-Yeon Lee, who grew up in North Korea, defected to the South, became a translator for the United States Army during the war, later immigrated to the United States, became a U.S. citizen, and was a doctor for like 45 years. He is also passed. This is what the memorial looked like before it was built. It's just an open field. It's kind of a wasteland, if you will, of the Miami Township Park. Next. This shows the foundations of the memorial as it's being built. Each one of the small footers represents a gravestone of one of the 19 men from Claremont County who died in the Korean War. Fortunately, there were none from Milford. That is a hand grenade box. All the hand grenades were carried in wood so that they wouldn't spark them off. But in there is, inside the prescription bottles, are pieces of ground, soil from North and South Korea and Camp Casey. And it was brought to the United States next. And during that dedication, the Korean War veterans and others poured the soil from South Korea into the soil of Claremont County, mixed it up, and sanctified that soil and highlighted the contact between the 2 countries. Next. And this is the memorial from the reverse side. You can see the 19 gravestones. The stone, as you go next, represents the stone in the hills where Korea was fought. There's a stainless steel pedestal, and then a 6-foot-long granite that has the numbers of the units in the Korean War and the numbers who died, and a Purple Heart. And on the other side is a representation of a photograph that was about this big, Zodiac photograph that they lasered onto a 6-foot-long piece of granite of a bunker that was built by my father and his platoon during 1952. It was destroyed by a direct enemy artillery shell. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Okay. Thank you. The Spirit of 76 is a unique spot. It is a spot of remembrance, quiet contemplation. It links the generations of Claremont Countyans and Milford in particular from the Korean War, the current time, because the students that were involved in raising money for the monument. And the benches, the granite benches, etc. And it is really surprising how many different uses have been made of this park. And I'm just amazed at how many different functions that were there. For instance, it is a spot for Eagle Scout projects. Constitution Day, which is celebrated in Milford every year, was held there for a number of years. There are field trips from schools. Wedding photos were taken at that point. It is a place where veterans are meeting each other and joining up and finding ways to help each other. People just walk around the park. This one, I can't believe myself, so I have to explain dragonflies. I was up there several weeks ago with members of the township working staff who were planning a pollinator garden that's going to go into the arboretum. And this guy was walking around with this very expensive camera and a lens that looked like it was 5 feet long, taking photographs. And he asked us what we were doing, and we told him we're putting in the pollinator garden. He said, "Good, I'm hoping you're not screwing it up." And I said, "Excuse me? What do you mean we're not screwing it up?" He said, "You probably don't know this, but there are more species of dragonflies at that pond than any other place that they know of in southwest Ohio." Who knew? So as time goes on, this memorial, this park is going to find new and more exciting and different uses. And if you haven't been there, I strongly invite you to go over and take a trip around the park, take a look at it, and I think you'll be impressed with what we have done in the last 10 years. Thank you.
All right, next, I'd like to take the opportunity to explain the boxes up front. The Milford Junior High School Builders Club over the years has run the Treats for Troops, and the Treats for Troops was done between October 25th and November 3rd this year because, of course, that fell over the Halloween weekend. Mrs. Getz, our principal, came up with the idea that our students could participate, but also wear their costume on Friday to school. We're proud to report that we've had more students than ever before participate in the Treats for Troops. We've also had our elementary buildings and our preschool participate as well. And it is my distinct pleasure again to introduce Ms. Diana Lawrence with the Troop Box Ministries to share more about where these donations are going to go and what that organization does.
Thank you again for having me, and I'm just amazed when I see these boxes when I come in. Just look forward to it every year, and I'll have to say another thing. I learned so much about Milford from just coming to your board meetings. Friend of Gary's and certainly his dad, he was the one that got us started with Milford schools in having the kids to bring in items for these boxes. So we're going on like 8, 9 years that the schools has been making these boxes up for us. Sent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We couldn't even imagine how many. One good thing I'll say this year, and of course we pulled out of Afghanistan, I've got like 27 boxes back in the last 2 weeks, simply because all these men and women have been pulled out of Afghanistan. So this is a big treat for us to see them back home, or whether they're transferred to another unit, a base, or whatever. This lets us know that they have been moved out of harm's way there. So we're just tickled to see that. We get a lot of letters, a lot of cards, a lot of phone calls, and they're about these boxes that we're sending on. Now, when we get the boxes home in the next week or so, we go through them, make sure everything in there can be sent, because there's certain things that we can't send. I've kind of relayed that to the other lady, that's Jennifer, that's in charge of that. And the last 2 or 3 years, I'm amazed at what goes in those boxes. It's all perfect. We no longer get glass. We don't get some liquids that we can't send. Smaller items, cans of things. Before, when we first started, we get big cans, and I said, if we put them in there, they don't get a whole lot in that box. Takes up too much space. And I said, if you can ask them, kind of watch that and make it smaller cans. And you wouldn't believe how much we can get in these boxes. And carefully packing them in there, and I've had them tell me, including my grandson, he said, I've told the guys when you get a box, and he was in Korea, when you get a box, don't try to put that back in there because you'll never get it all back in. It's perfectly put in there. And we do that intentionally. If there's a little space, it's a piece of gum or a pack of gum or something like that goes in there. There is no shaking anything around. So they give us a lot of feedback. A lot of the men and women over there tell us what really is my favorite thing to get. So this is what we kind of listen for and get a lot of feedback, and that tells us what we go in these boxes. So we're really appreciative of all of this. And like I say, for years, Milford has really just come through for us. We've sent, from the boxes we unpacked and go through them here, we've sent for 6 months out of these things. So this stocks our shelves up to the hilt. I mean, we have plenty. We are not hurting for anything to go in those boxes. So really appreciate all that the kids do. Bill, his dad, is like, he got us started, and he would tell me every year, now you call that Board of Education and talk to so-and-so and tell them, you know, are we going to do this year? And I would, every year, I would go, he'd say, did you call yet? And well, not yet, we'll call. So he kept after me till I know that the school was behind us, and this made such a big impact on me and the guys and girls that come in and help me pack, because we have a lot of people, the kids will come in from different schools, and they need some community service hours. They come in and help pack boxes for those community service hours. So not only do we do it with the kids there, we have scout troops come in. We have American Legions. They want to come in and get involved. So there's any number of different groups that gets involved with this. It's not just a handful of us. So we're really glad to be able to reach out. And we did try and do our best with helping with Bill with the Korean memorial when he had it. Got involved a lot there, and like I say, I learned a lot from it. So I had a brother that's in Korea. This was special to me. And then my grandson, just in the last 3 years, was in Korea. So now he's back in state, but it's like I love to deal with our military. The veterans, we had a big breakfast yesterday for the veterans in Georgetown. I like the active, I like the veterans. So this is what we do, try to encourage all of them, be there for them, and have their back. I thank you guys all for everything you do. Okay.
Once again, thank you, Ms. Lawrence. I'm going to turn it back over, President Ham, members of the board, to Mr. Kaufman for one final presentation of some Pattison art.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Members of the Board of Education, for again another opportunity to recognize some of our incredible student artists in the district. This month we will be highlighting artwork created by some of our student artists at Pattison Elementary. If I can invite our student artists from Pattison, as well as Mrs. Huggins, their art teacher, and Tiffany, if you want to come up as well. Mrs. Selm, the principal, is here this evening. Well done on your artwork. We have 6 student artists that we're recognizing this month. 3 students for other obligations couldn't make it this evening. So we have kindergartner Scarlett Wood created the figurine with the rainbow background in the front of the room. And then I have Caleb Lang. Caleb created this beautiful butterfly with, are those oil pastels? Awesome. Awesome, Caleb. I have Pearson Harley. Pearson created the charcoal pencil drawing right here. Ava Haskamp and Ava Kratke couldn't be with us this evening, but they have the 2 beautiful patriotic flag landscapes that are in the back of the room. And then we have Sydney Mark, 5th grader. Sydney created this beautiful pastel chalk drawing of the solar system, galaxy, is that right? Well done. And then finally, if I could draw your attention to the back of the room, Mrs. Huggins with her 5th grade students created a beautiful patriotic mural, and she informs me this is an interactive art piece. So if you want at the end of the meeting, you can stand between the wings, and it creates a beautiful backdrop for a photo. So congratulations to our student artists at Pattison, Mrs. Huggins, and your wonderful work this month. Before I turn it over to Mrs. Selm for just some quick words on Pattison and art, I wanted to share with everyone as well that our marching band leaves tomorrow morning. They're returning to national competition at Grand Nationals in Indianapolis. So our band historically is one of the top averages in the top 30 or 40 marching bands in the entire country. So we're really looking forward to an exciting weekend with them, and best of luck to our Milford High School marching band. Mrs. Selm.
Milford Board of Education and Milford community. This is a surprise for our art teacher, Mrs. Huggins. Mrs. Huggins, will you join me for just a moment? For those of you who don't know, Tracy Huggins was awarded the Teacher of the Year for District 10 in the state of Ohio. And we are so very proud of her. We're so grateful for all that she does. And so all 500 students have created these 2 banners for you to continue celebrating you and show you the heartfelt congratulations for your award. Thank you. You're welcome.
I won't take too long. I just want to say thank you again to Principal Selm and Superintendent Spicer for nominating me. It's proven to be such a cool experience. I get to be in a cohort with other former Teacher of the Years, and I've learned so much already. So thank you for this opportunity, and to my students who inspire me every day. And finally, just the community. I'm so proud and honored to be in a school district that advocates and understands the importance of arts, and it's awesome. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And the final piece that I'd like to share from the world of arts in the district is this tomorrow night actually kicks off holiday performance season in the district. So in addition to wonderful choir concerts and band concerts, if you check our district website, tomorrow night kicks off opening night for the best Christmas pageant ever with Milford High School Drama. So encourage everyone. Tickets can be purchased at the door. It is, I've been told it is a hilarious combination of A Christmas Story and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So
there you go.
Look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Thank you, Tracy, Mrs. Selm. I think it goes without saying once again that Tracy was one of the top 11 teachers in the state, not just Claremont County, but the state. So she was a finalist, and she is the #1 teacher in Ohio in our hearts. So thank you, Tracy.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. I want to thank the Color Guard, excellent presentation to open up our meetings. Our JROTC for their recognition at their national championships. What an incredible feat. I think that every year, listen, Gary, Larry, you guys hit it out of the park with your presentation. You really do. And I'll always look forward to this meeting because of that very thing. And I appreciate you guys doing that. Thank you, Diane, as well, for putting this together for the 8th or 9th year in a row. This is an amazing thing. And hopefully we'll keep doing this, even though maybe there's less troops in different spots of the world. But it's an important thing. And again, congratulations to our Pattison artists. Congratulations to our Teacher of the Year, Huggins. Well done, well done.
And I just wanted to say, with regard to the presentation that Gary made, thank you so much for that. And I think we should note certainly that I believe this is the first year your dad has not been here with us, and I certainly look forward to him. He was always a breath of fresh air. And Larry, you said that following Gary and speaking was like taking a knife to a gunfight. I'm sure Gary felt the same way with his dad when he went through that. Great guy, original, can never be replaced here in Milford.
Okay, we're going to move on to item C on our agenda this evening, which is our procedure for public commentary. Do we have anyone that would like to speak?
Amanda Fox.
My name is Amanda Fox. I live at 6331 Lake Ridge Court, Loveland, Ohio 45140. I came to you in August and I asked you for masks for our K-6 students. We're almost there. Last Wednesday, the CDC and the FDA approved the vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. That's a key component to ending this pandemic. What I'm asking you is that our community is having a vaccine clinic for those that are interested next Wednesday. Those kiddos will get their second dose December 7th, and they will be fully vaccinated December 21st. What I'm coming to you tonight is I'm asking you to continue the use of masks until 4 p.m. on December 17th. When the students return to school in January, it can be masks optional. We gave our high school and junior high students an opportunity to go to school without masks because they had a vaccine. We were all okay with that. There was a vaccine component. We need this vaccine component. All we need is time. It's 19 school days. That's what I'm asking you tonight, is to keep the masks for the 19 days that we need for our students 5 to 11 who want and choose to be fully vaccinated. Thank you for your time.
Don Moss.
So my name is Don Moss. I'm a 23-year combat veteran. I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. I supported Bosnia, jumped all around the world, and I guarantee I got packages from somebody like you. I love you for that, and we all did. Thank you very much. Okay. My entire career, I did threat assessment for tactical teams, for national security, up and down the chain. I had to use data for everything that I did. I had to use trends. I had to use numbers. I would love to stand here before you without this mask and say it's over, and we're just not there yet. I believe Amanda just talked about the vaccines. We have 5,000 cases for the first time in a month just hit Ohio. We're going into the winter surge, which we ran into last year. Delta is over. Delta was an ass kicker. It took a lot of people's lives. Unfortunately, that's not the end. The winter will push people inside because the temperatures are going to get colder. Every place that has cold weather always saw surges. We're going to see those again. We're already seeing those. Governor DeWine came out and issued a warning, said it's not over. We're still running into issues. It is happening now. We can look at data. I sent an email with links to all of you last night, Ohio Department of Health, Harvard, Oxford, people who know what they're talking about. It's not quite over. I agree with Amanda, the vaccine component and reducing the spread by at least 63% from vaccinated people is going to help everybody once we get these kids done. And that's parents' choice whether they get vaccinated. It's going to help everybody. We just need time to get it done. Because we know what this trend was last year and we know what's coming, we can't deny the numbers. All I would ask is you have kept Milford schools safe so far. I think we've had one outbreak in the kindergarten where they don't have masks. You have kept kids in school. We just want kids in school. And you have done that because of your choices to keep masks. Now we have the vaccine, which is going to help tremendously, that option for elementary school kids, just like the high school. Just keep it for a couple weeks more. Let us get through the holidays, see what happens, and then make that choice. I think everybody is going to feel a lot better. The community spread, the school spread, all of those things. And that is just based on numbers of what has happened, what we are seeing happen now, but what we have coming down the road that's going to help us. So I hope you consider that as you make that choice. Thank you very much.
Tanya Wagner.
Tanya Wenger, 6081 Donna J, Loveland, Ohio. Today I'm asking the board to keep the mask for K through 6 in place until winter break. This will give families who wish to vaccinate their children the opportunity to have them fully vaccinated before removing masks. Those families that choose to vaccinate deserve the opportunity to vaccinate their children fully. Thank you.
Adriana Spiller.
Hello, I'm Adrienne Spiller, living at 5381 Hollybrook Lane. As the pandemic continues to evolve and we continue to gain knowledge, we need to make changes with the information that we've learned. At the beginning of the school year, the board was concerned with the Ohio Department of Health guidelines and quarantine for children missing school and continued to suggest to listen to the experts. Now the experts are saying that well children do not have to mask and children do not even have to quarantine if they come in contact with someone who is COVID positive. You guys know the guidelines. This should ease the concerns with children missing school due to quarantining. Last meeting, it was suggested to wait until Halloween. If you look at the elementary buildings as a whole and do the math, currently 12 students out of 3,326 have COVID. This is 0.0036% of students. 99.996% of children are well and we're reacting like everyone is sick. COVID-19 is not going to go away and we must learn to live with it. Decisions should be based on facts and risk factor. We can't live in fear. Children have a greater risk of dying in a car crash or drowning than dying from COVID, and we still allow our children to ride in vehicles and allow them to go swimming without thinking twice about it. I have 2 children that attend Meadowview Elementary, and it's a wonderful school. As stated in past board meetings, masks were optional at open house with most families not wearing them, and there was no huge outbreak within the district that I'm aware of. One of my daughters has developed a medical condition in the last couple of months, and the doctors told us it was from mouth breathing. Colgate.com, one site of many, defines this as mask mouth and is caused by wearing masks for long periods of time. In addition to this, both of my daughters have been suffering from headaches this year, one worse than the other. When I spoke to the nurse at the pediatrician's office, she herself told me that she hears quite frequently of children getting headaches from wearing masks, and she's lucky enough to live in a district where her kids don't have to wear a mask. I requested a medical exemption for my daughter, and as it was suggested for us to do so, and because the CDC has such strict guidelines on who can obtain an exemption, we could not get one. The doctor told me to treat with Tylenol. My question is, why not just fix the problem? I'm simply asking you tonight to please make a motion to vote and remove the mask mandate in the elementary buildings and take into consideration the rights of we parents and allow us to choose whether or not we want our children to wear a mask to school. I'm not asking anybody to send their child to school without a mask. If a parent wants to send their child to school with a mask, then great. If not, that's good too, but it should be the parent's choice and not yours because there are children. Thank you for your time.
Lucas Spiller.
So, not as good a speaker as my wife. Also, 5381 Hollybrook Lane, as long as she leaves me and lets me stay there. So, it's been frustrating, and watching these things from home, not wanting to come in here, not wanting to have to do this. But, you know, these numbers that we're given in this dashboard, you know, they explain it to me. You know, in business and stuff, you look at the numbers, you look at things, and we can't even decide from week to week or month to month to month at the meetings what is going to be our decision maker. You know, what is the milestones? What are we looking for? We're just not getting that. And then, you know, it's going to be, well, maybe after Halloween, and so Halloween's made it, everything survived, you know, there was not a big outbreak. So I just don't understand. You know, I donate blood every 8 weeks, you know, helping people out. And I'm there giving blood, and somebody breaks open a ammonia packet. Everybody in there, all the nurses are like, whoa, what's that smell? What's going on? And so, oh yeah, I accidentally broke this. Everybody in there had to have a mask, even me. But I still choose to go give the blood. You know, I choose to. I can choose not to. I want my kids to be able to choose not to wear a mask, and I want to be able to have that conversation with them and us make the decision. And this is just getting ridiculous. You know, the vaccine, I mean, everything is lining up. Vaccines are now available. They can start taking them. There's masks. You can wear 2 masks. I would love you to. I mean, I support everybody in their own choices and freedom on this Veterans Day. So, vote to end it.
Russ Ruine.
Let's rewind 5853 Whitegate Court. I wasn't going to speak on the mask thing. I kind of thought that might have been over, but you guys ought to be ashamed of yourself. You voted to protect kids. Now we have a case where a kid has got a condition because of something that you're forcing that child to wear. You should be ashamed for your decision on keeping the mask. And I don't know, I didn't even know you were voting tonight on that. But the reason I came tonight, my wife sent an email to the board a couple days ago about the administrative contracts being renewed. Typically, they're renewed in May. No response, zero. Just coincidentally, we get a new board that's getting voted in, and all of a sudden they're wanting to make rush in for contract extensions, raises, and everything. And I know it's too early for that. You typically do that in May, and now all of a sudden you're wanting to do it before the new board comes in. I think that's ridiculous. I'm sure you guys have already made up your mind. I'm sure you've all met about it. Just like the mask thing, I'm sure you guys have made up your mind. Every time you come in here, you make your mind up. It's like the only thing that we can do is the TV and the community can see what's said here. But you really, I mean, whatever the contract thing, that's horrible. But you guys ought to really feel bad over the condition. And this is just one parent that came in and said something. Like he said, he didn't want to even show up to say anything. He didn't feel comfortable. But yet his child is suffering because of a decision that you guys had made. And I spend a lot of time in Florida, and I keep hearing about numbers. Everything's numbers, and they trend a certain way. Well, let me tell you this. In Florida, COVID don't exist as far as the people are living. I walk around, I touch everything. I'm around people, and I have been throughout the entire pandemic. As soon as they opened back, when they closed up the first time, they didn't realize. But once people realized what was happening, and it was all wide open, and people live life there. No masks, they enjoy it. The kids walk around, they enjoy what they do. So that's all I have to say.
Corey Combs.
My name's Corey Combs. I live at 595 Lodgepole Drive in Milford. I want to echo what everyone else has already said about the mask mandate. I think that point got hammered pretty hard, and I can't believe we're still talking about it. But I'm here today on behalf of my father, Jerry Combs, who was recently elected to the school board and will begin his term in January. Thanks. For those who are not yet aware or may have heard otherwise, my father is following doctor's orders to stay home following a serious illness. However, he's engaged and involved, getting better every day, thanks to your support and prayers. We appreciate it, and looking forward to getting to work here on this board. He's home watching the meeting right now, as a matter of fact. I'm not yet aware of what was decided during executive session, but I wish to bring the community's attention the curious timing of the proposed contract renewal that you will find in today's agenda. I find it strange that the contract renewal is on this agenda many months before the contract itself is due to expire, and just a few weeks before new board members get sworn in. Additionally curious is the fact that the very administration positions our campaign identified as needing the most performance review are the ones who find themselves rushed up to the front of the line in this unprecedented 11th hour attempt to secure salary guarantees. I've worked in politics and on committees at every level, and I know a really fishy deal when I see one. And the fact that multiple agenda items concerning 2 additional contract renewals were removed by this board after the publishing of the agenda makes it even fishier. And let me be clear, I believe in paying for good performance. If the performance is worthy of these renewals and raises, let's give it to them. That should speak for itself. I see no good reason to rush this unless you're concerned that the performance does not in fact garner continued employment after new members are sworn in. I'm genuinely hopeful that the board or the superintendent has a good explanation for these decisions. I don't wish for what I'm alleging here. They begged and the people here to my left are not stupid. They begged and pleaded for you to listen about mandating masks. They're begging and pleading here again tonight. They also asked you to address a laundry list of issues in Milford, and you didn't do it. And the community let you know how it felt about that on Election Day. We simply want answers to these simple questions, and I hope someone here can provide them. Lastly, I wish to thank the dozens of employees, teachers, and other Milford staff members that have reached out to us and voiced their support for our efforts and made us aware of some issues facing them in their work lives. I want to continue to encourage people to reach out to us about these issues. We promise not to compromise your identity, and we promise to support you and listen to you and do everything we can in our power to ensure that Milford is the best place it can be for our staff at all levels.
30
I
seconds.
thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for your time.
Bill Thomas.
Bill Thomas, 838 Dorjean Lane. Came tonight to speak regarding a couple of things. One, I want to thank the veterans in the room. Thank you for serving our country, especially the gentleman that spoke that's a combat veteran. Combat veterans they go through a lot, and I really appreciate your service. There were some things on the agenda that I was disturbed by, the change in dress code, and kind of some things that transpired in the high school today. Not just my child, but several other children and parents have reached out to me, said that there was nothing discussed about Veterans Day in the high school. While we see all this, what I will call a dog and pony show to the public, that the school cares about the veterans, high schoolers, they go all day and didn't know anything about Veterans Day. This parent reached out to me. I wanted to make you aware that the school did not mention Veterans Day today at all. My daughter worked in the office and asked why nothing was on announcements. Everyone said, I don't know why. Why? Why didn't we discuss it at the high school? We did it at the elementary. We did it at the junior high. That's deplorable. I'm sorry. These kids need to recognize and understand the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. The fact that they graduate and don't truly understand the difference of those 2 days and what they stand for is appalling. The next thing I want to discuss is the dress code. I was sent a copy of the dress code that Milford's discussing, and lots of red strikeouts. And when you look at the dress code from 7th to 12th, it says it's crossed out upper garments, clothing, jewelry, book bags, other personal articles. It goes down here to say sexually suggestive contents, violence, death, suicide. All this stuff is red marked out. So I would love for the board to give an explanation as to why we're crossing out all of this stuff on the dress code. Even the finger length to the skirts, it's in for the elementary school, but not the high school. It's been taken out. So girls are now allowed to wear skirts this high? I mean, this is on the, I've got a copy of it right here, so I would love an explanation on that. As regarding the masking, I think we all have heard enough about the masking, and the junior high has plenty of students that are not vaccinated because they don't meet the age requirements, and we don't have an outbreak in the junior high. So to come up here and say that masking is working and we're preventing anything, well, it's not preventing anything in the junior high because there's no mask mandate in the junior high.
30 seconds.
So as far as the board members, the public has started to speak. We replaced 2 board members with strong conservative candidates. And a school board should never be political. But Emily and Andrea, both of you made it political. You both made it political. And now we're bringing politics to the board because of each of you. You wear masks here, but in public, people send pictures. You don't have masks, Andrea, when you go out to the bars and you're out at By Gollies, you don't wear a mask. I've got pictures that's sent to me. So this dog and pony show of masks is a joke. Take it somewhere else because you guys are gone.
3 minutes. Wendy, thank you.
Wendy Taylor, 868 Trappers Crossing, Milford, Ohio, 45150. You guys are so upset about masks. You don't want them to wear a mask. You can't tell them to wear a mask. Well, I don't think you can tell them what to wear. I don't think you have the right to tell my daughter what she can and cannot wear and the length of the skirt that she wears. Isn't that my job? How is that different than you telling her she can or cannot wear a mask? You can't have it both ways.
That's all I have.
President Ham, members of the board, before we move on to Part D, Board of Education, in regards to Mr. Thomas's comments about Veterans Day, the Veterans Day program at the high school is in fact tomorrow. It was not today, so there is a planned Veterans Day program. It is tomorrow.
Okay, we're going to move on to item D, our Board of Education, Superintendent John Spicer. These are our board updates, right?
Board of Education, yeah, the district masking update. If we could click on that link, please. That'll take you to, okay. Take you somewhere. Not there. I'm looking for the COVID update, the dashboard. Thank you. Thank you. The update, the COVID update that was sent out today was updated on our website. I did want to note, it's a good thing I've got it memorized up there. The second one from the far left that has 6 students, that is Sipelt Elementary. They did have a spike in cases. They were up to about 12. I think that represents certainly the Halloween spike that we had thought would happen. But certainly what you see up there is, I would consider our Halloween spike. Boydie Smith, as noted, I would say that there were a few more, but there were 2 groups of siblings that would represent those numbers. And then if you look at the preschool, had some cases, the preschool's not masked. They are not allowed to, or they do not fall under, if you will, the Ohio Department of Health. You can put a mask on for 14 days and still go to school. So they do not fall under that. So therefore, those students do have to quarantine, and that's why that quarantine number is so high. And that is it for me.
Okay, comments or questions before we move on?
Can you,
No,
are we talking about masking still?
We are.
Yeah. Can you pull up the other document? Yes. So this is if we're looking at updates, this is the metrics that have been used by the superintendents in the area. Who sends these out? This is from
the Health Collaborative.
But it goes to that's how you got it?
It goes to Julianne Nesbitt, then she pushes it out to all of the.
And so this is what John has been sending us as a board all semester, really. What to look at. And on page page 3 just says we want to be in person. I think everybody in this room agrees that. Page 4, it's layers of protection. And I think the important thing to know here is that it is, if you go one more, the layers of protection are vaccination and masking, as opposed to, and in addition to what we're able to do within the school parameters that we have. And then the next one talks about, I assume this can be available to people who actually want to read it because it's a horrible presentation to try to read up here, but the vaccine clinic at Milford is 11/16, so we're able to offer a COVID clinic here on site, which I think is great, and that will be for everybody who's eligible. 5 weeks after 11/16 is 12/21, so that means people who come to the clinic or get it in the community will be fully vaccinated in December, which is great. That has been a really long time coming, and looking forward to that. And if you go to slide 9, yes, so this talks about what we should consider, and this is the stuff that John's been looking at this whole time, along with members of the board. The district or building data, which is the dashboards he's been sharing, community data, there's some of that in here as well. And I do think that if we look at the in-school transmission and the quarantine, especially with the new quarantine rules, we really have done a good job of keeping kids in district. Vaccination completion is obviously 0 for our elementaries because it's not available to be fully there. And then the other component, I think what's hard about looking at district data is it's how we report it, and it's 2 tests, and what if a parent does the right thing and keeps their sick kid home for a day or 2, and they go back to school, they may or may not have had COVID, we don't know, but the parents are being responsible and keeping them home. And if we look at community data, the number that we've been looking at, incidence is 100 cases per 100,000 people. That's kind of the number that DeWine has been basing things on, and then vaccination completion. If you go two more, well, the next one's the building data, the case counts. We've kind of talked about that. The next slide, this you've shared with us before, John, is the recommendations about when masking, what they consider high rates of transmission. I think the key thing to look at here in general is when the rate goes under 100 per 100,000, that's when things start opening. Go down one more, it says in orange or red, they still recommend masking. And so orange was at 50, red is at 100. And then go to slide 14. This is gonna be really hard to read, get your glasses out. But this is the incident rate that we base that red chart on. And it's kind of hard to read, but the bottom, second from the left is Claremont. This is county area. And we're currently at 167, which is in the red. We haven't been under 100. Last time we were under 100 was August. And last in June, we were in the 30s, which, you know, that was obviously pre-Delta. We are coming down from the spike, but it's starting to plateau or go back up again. So I think if we are looking at the data that we've been considering this whole time, we're just not quite there yet to loosen up on the masking. So that's it. I just wanted to do that. Like, I thought this presentation was helpful, and I wanted to share with others.
Okay, and anybody else got anything?
I would like to make a motion. May I go ahead and do that now, or?
You'll need to add it to the agenda first.
I'd like to make a motion to add a motion to the agenda.
Okay. What's the motion that you would like to add to the agenda?
I'd like to recommend that we eliminate the K-6 masking protocol at the end of the day, December 17th, 2021. When students return to school in January 2022, masks will be highly recommended but not required. Authority for implementing any COVID protocols shall return to the superintendent after December 17th, 2021.
We have a motion to add this to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
No, first we have to approve to put the motion on the agenda. And then we
Yeah.
discuss, and then we vote on it.
This is the motion put on the agenda. If there's any discussion on this motion to put it on the agenda, that's the discussion. We'll have discussion on the other one later. Hearing none, roll call, please.
We're voting on putting it on the agenda, right?
This is just to put it on the agenda, not to vote on it.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes. And now you want to make your motion.
Now I'd like to make the motion. Do I need to read it again?
Yeah.
I make a motion to eliminate the K-6 masking protocol at the end of the day, December 17th, 2021. When students return to school in January 2022, masks will be highly recommended but not required. And authority for implementing any COVID protocols shall return to the superintendent after December 17th, 2021.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
You know, like my fellow board members, I know everybody here is anxious to remove the masking protocol from our K-6 students. I personally do not feel it is quite time yet. I would like to vote tonight to keep the required masking in place, the protocol in place through December 17th, and have our students return to school in January with masks recommended but not required. One of the main reasons I supported masking only K-6 this year was because a vaccine was not yet available for their age group. Now it is, which is great news. However, the full vaccination process is 5 weeks from start to finish. Those who receive their first shot right away will be fully vaccinated shortly after Thanksgiving. But others had to wait to get in, and they will not be through the process until winter break at the earliest. And as pointed out by a couple people, our own clinic is not until next week. We are close. We are so close, but we are not there yet. Cases are still high, as Emily was sharing. Claremont is still red. We did see a spike in our schools this week about 10 days after Halloween, and Thanksgiving is coming up. The weather is getting colder. There are more and more reports about surges coming or already starting. And certainly in our area, as it begins to get cold, we know what happened last year. Masks do work. They don't stop transmission completely, but they reduce and mitigate. Cincinnati Children's released a study at the end of September conducted among over 64,000 students from 7 school districts. It showed the number of students diagnosed with COVID was 78% higher in partially masked districts than those that had universal masking. The University of Wisconsin did a test with CPR dummies that showed the chances of COVID penetration and infection was reduced by 382 times when compared to going maskless. The ABC Science Collaborative collected data from over 1 million K-12 students and staff in North Carolina, showing that in-school spread is reduced by masking. And these are only a few of the studies. I know one of the most popular arguments against masking is that children generally do not get seriously ill with COVID, but that is changing. Children's is full, and just as importantly, children can spread the virus. 2 weeks ago, my 92-year-old mother was taken to the ER. They were flooded with COVID cases, and we were told she arrived just in time. If she'd come a little later, they would have had to turn her away, and she would not have received treatment. A huge part of being willing to mask is being willing to care for the most vulnerable among us. These are people like Emily's daughter and my mother. Masking reduces their chance of getting COVID and helps ensure our medical system has the capacity to care for them when something else happens, such as with my mother. By keeping the mask requirement in place through December 17th, this is just 4 more weeks, 19 days. 1 week before Thanksgiving, then a break, then 3 until the winter break. But these handful of days can possibly mean the difference between life and death for others in our community. I ask my fellow board members to think about those who are vulnerable and give the children's vaccine time to work. Please keep masks in place through December 17th, the last day of school in 2021.
I'd like to say a few things that are not necessarily for or against this particular resolution, but I'm always bothered by the fact that there's so much misinformation about why I, in particular, felt that the mask mandate was necessary. Most important reason to me was that the health department quarantine rules where a student who was unvaccinated and unmasked had to be sent home on quarantine. The evidence shows that perhaps even hundreds of students were saved from that quarantine by this policy and that it was the correct action. By this policy, we've kept our students in school and our schools open, and that is the responsibility as a board, even though some community members have told us it is not. However, now we have a new option. The new option allows even an unvaccinated and unmasked student to stay in school on 2 conditions: that they continue to have negative tests and that they wear a mask for 14 days after exposure. We must continue to highly recommend that students wear masks a little longer and that we not abandon all cautions just because we eliminate the mask mandate as such. We have a lot of input from people on both sides, people who argue that it should be changed as of this coming Monday, and others who say that it should not be changed until the 1st of January. I'm somewhat open in terms of the exact date that we implement this, but I think that we are at a point that we can move toward normalcy in that regard. I'm open to hearing other comments about the exact implementation date.
Yeah, if I could, always the gentleman, I allowed Andrea to go first, and she jumped ahead of me here. So I'm going to ask a question. First of all, would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment to this, moving the date back to November 30th?
Well, for me, November 30th is a couple days after we come back from...
It is the day we come back.
It's the day we come back. Oh, right, okay. So, you know, we're going through Thanksgiving. I worry a lot about that. 10 days after Thanksgiving is going to be somewhere around the end of that week, beginning of the next week, I guess beginning of the next week. At that point, if we have no masks and the vaccine has not been given time to take effect in those who have received it or those who are just receiving it potentially at that point, because I know appointments are hard to get, then we have done a disservice to these kids who are trying to get protected and the parents who are trying to get them protected when it's only a few more days, really. 19 days to respect these people who are trying to do the best that they think for their children. Nobody is being forced to be vaccinated, but, you know, I feel that it's appropriate to wait until the vaccine gets the chance to take effect. We come back in January.
Well, they would have, if they acted when the vaccine became available, and I know some people are going to say there's too many people in line. If you really want your kid to be vaccinated, you get in line and you wait until that happens. So you were talking from November the 3rd. 3 weeks later, you would get your second vaccination. I just think it's a good starting point coming back from Thanksgiving. They're going to have some time off there. And the argument for waiting through a little bit longer on Thanksgiving, then we're going to be waiting a little bit longer through Christmas and New Year's and Valentine's Day and Easter, and this just goes on and on and on.
No, because this motion says we're done as of the end of this semester. So, you know, come next year, then it's up to Mr.
I don't think anybody
Spicer.
has a crystal ball on this. We're using our best judgment.
This mask requirement.
But I will say that
mandate.
Mr. Spicer spoke to Seipelt and Boyd as far as the slight elevation and what they have. Seipelt is now back down to 6. They were at 13 on Monday. They're now down to 6. You've got the 2 sibling groups at Boyd. If you look at the other 4 elementary schools that have 2,320 students, you have 2 cases. I don't think you're ever going to have 0 cases. I believe you're there. If you'll accept a friendly amendment, then we move on and we go to the vote. We're going to go to the vote regardless, obviously. But I'll tell you right now, I'm going to vote no. I'm not going to extend it out that far. And if it passes, and we're still not in a horrible place. This is, this is a group of 5. I get 1 vote. If it doesn't pass, I'm going to be making another motion right after yours. So,
I know.
just so that you know what happened.
I'd just like to stress that it's not really a matter of, and remember what that date is, not a matter of flipping a switch and turning masks off, that we would certainly want to strongly recommend wearing masks for a time until the situation stabilizes more. And I would certainly ask that teachers encourage their students to wear masks in the situations where they're in close contact with others in the classroom. So it's not really a matter of saying, okay, nobody's going to wear masks tomorrow. We want to encourage all students, if possible, to wear masks when they're in dangerous situations.
And if we, when the masks come off, I think we have to recognize that we're putting a burden on the K-6 teachers so the quarantine rule, Mr. Yaki, that you were reading, says if you have a close contact, you have to be masked for 14 days or get negative tests. So that means if there is these cases in an unvaccinated population, which is all of our elementaries until winter break, that it's now the teacher's responsibility to remember who is supposed to be wearing a mask, and we turn them into the mask patrol. And I think the teachers are already pretty busy right now without, Johnny has to, but Susie can't, but you have to, but not today, that was last week. You have 14 days left, There's an extra complication logistically that the elementary teachers are going to have to be aware of.
Of course, the contact tracing is also a very laborious task for all of those people already.
And Dave, I just want to say the vaccines are not I wish they were as easy to get as you said, but they aren't. I do think it's reasonable, especially with our clinic next Tuesday. I think that will be helpful for all the families who will want them. We'll have been able to get them within, and I mean, that still is only 2 weeks from approval, which is kind of amazing if we look back to what the adults got. I mean, it was a month or two until all the adults who wanted it were able to get it.
That vaccine clinic is a wonderful thing. We've done it before here. If we ever have to do it again, I guess we'll do it again. But the point is there's a point where you just got to say, let's go based on the data we have in our own community and in our own school district, and
But you've been
they're
looking
just
at
not
that.
here.
You've been looking at that Claremont data. You're the one who pointed out how low we were in June and July. We were in the 30s, and everybody took their masks off, including me. But now you don't like that number?
And further along, I am also looking at the zip code data as well.
Are we below 100 for zip codes?
One of those, I know we have. I think it's in your neighborhood. As a matter of fact, we were down as low as I think 77.
But
I think we had a little bit of a rise here in the last week due to the Halloween thing, but I anticipate that that's going to go down. You were, it was 87 on.
But my zip code is only a third of our elementary school or something. I mean, it's still pretty
I get it. I get it. But when I started taking this data, instead of being 87, it was 199, and so things have dropped dramatically.
I think we're headed the right way.
You gotta pull the trigger somewhere. I'm just a little more anxious to pull the trigger, and let's get back to some normalcy for these kids and take the problems off
Part of what I'm thinking of is obviously my kids, and this is Dave. This is my daughter in the cardiac ICU after open heart surgery. So we've gone 20 months with masking, and my family is vaccinated when we are able to get vaccinated. And so kids like my daughter who have had open heart surgery and have Down syndrome don't fare as well as the general population if they get sick. We are this close to keeping her safe. It's a matter of, I mean, if you're saying November 30th, it's a matter of weeks, and you're not willing to give my daughter 2 more weeks of masking.
That's bullying. Wow. That's bullying.
She has order. She has the ability to continue to wear a mask to protect herself. And we are all very friendly up here. This is rare that we have this type of conversation. So.
She is. I will say though, also, an observation from being in the schools with our current mask mandate, it's kind of sloppy. There's not a lot of, I mean, even my own children, they know the intent, but the mask slips throughout the day. So if she shows up and half of her peers aren't wearing it, no matter how much we've talked about masking, the peer pressure is going to set in, and they're going to follow the crowd because they're elementary kids. It's hard to stick up like that.
And in Pattison, where she attends, there are 0 cases and 0 quarantines as of right now, and it's been 1 or 0 for 3 weeks now.
Because we have masks, so we're able to keep them away.
And you can still have masks, and we're going to strongly recommend that they wear masks. I'm done. Let's vote.
One thing I didn't hear was, I think everybody at this table knows my opinion, which is that I don't believe we should have ever taken operational control away from our administration and our superintendent. I still feel that way. If we are going to make the decision to take the masks off, or not mandate the masks, but strongly recommend based on the recommendations, CDC and Ohio Department of Health, are we also giving operational control back to our administration so that if they need to make adjustments and pivot and use the tools necessary to address when there is an issue?
That was part of the motion.
Is that in the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hearing no more comments, we'll close discussion and open roll call.
Mr. Yockey?
I'm going to vote no and wait for Mr. Miranda's motion.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
No.
Mr. Ham?
No.
President, I'd like to make a motion. And please have some decorum out here as we go through this.
Just a reminder, Dave, you'll need to make a motion to put your motion on the agenda. Okay.
I would like to put a motion on the agenda to remove masking on November 30th, which will align us with, will align our policy with the CDC and the Ohio Department of Health and all the state and local officials. And I want to further put this up for I'll put it on the agenda that the Board of Education will return all decisions to the district superintendent regarding masking in consultation, of course, with the Board of Education, the administrators, and others, thus restoring the full operational control to the superintendent.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? This is to put it on the agenda.
Right.
Hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes.
Now I get to do it, right? Okay, members of the board and the public. I move that the mask mandate for elementary students and staff be removed effective November 30th and replaced with a strong recommendation to wear masks, aligning the Milford School District masking policy with the recommendations of the CDC and state and local health officials. I further move that the Board of Education return all masking decisions to the district superintendent in consultation with the Board of Education, administration, and others, thus restoring full operational control to the superintendent.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Comments.
Dave, can you tell me a little bit about the CDC and state guidelines changing on November 30th? They change, what do you said as aligned to the CDC and state recommendations?
Recommendation, strongly recommending masks is where the CDC stands.
They
It's where
said
the
based
Ohio-
on based on transmission. This is from their website.
So they're mandating, are you telling me that the
No.
CDC is mandating masks?
They're recommending them.
They're recommending them, and that's what I said. Strong recommendation, let me read it again, to wear masks, aligning the Milford School District masking policy with the recommendations of the CDC and state and local health officials. That's what they tell us. They say they strongly recommend it.
Based on community transmission, though, like this, yes?
No, they strongly recommend it. They don't say, I strongly recommend it when it's this high, but not this high.
I don't think they can mandate, so.
It's not in their policy. It's not in
Right.
their purview.
So we would be aligning with them then.
I'm confused by that component of it, but okay. I don't have any other.
As I said before, of course, we get a lot of input, hundreds of emails sometimes on both sides. And I think that some people who wanted to institute the change effective next Monday and some people who want to go to the end of the semester, I think the November 30th date is a good compromise, and hopefully we'll get as many people vaccinated by that time as possible and begin to return to a little bit of normalcy.
Can we talk about what it would look like? So part of the second part of both of those motions were returning it back to Superintendent Spicer. What would it look like what will you be considering at, like parameters wise? Now, not say 4 cases here, I mean, like not specific numbers, but in general, what will you be looking at to reconsider?
I mean, I think we would look for spread inside the classroom as we have now. I would be consulting with Patty Price, our district nurse, who listens to all the, I would call it anecdotal data, because she listens to what parents or caregivers are telling her when they call in to say that that student's positive, who are they close to. And then we look at whether or not there was transmission either in school or out of school. So we would look at that, and then we would also consult with Julian Nesbitt, Public Health, as well, to make that decision of to say, second grade we probably need to mask all these kids up or shut it down, which we have done. I mean, we're not afraid to do that. If we think there is some kind of a spread within the classroom, we'll do that, and we've done it. Not afraid to do that. So that's kind of what we would be looking at. I think it would certainly be situational. It would not be. I think I would like to look at it personally. I would like to look at it surgically, as we have in the past. So it would be, place to place, if you will. And then it could be that, if a certain school is just, if it's blown up, if you will, then that might be something we would have to look at, saying, look, we need to shut the building down for a week or 2 weeks, or we need to mask up for a little while.
We saw it. You did that this year with a grade level.
We did. Yeah, we did. SciPel had some issues. Yep.
And then last year, the high school, we did, now granted that was online.
We did high school, but I think what's important to note about that, what really precipitated the high school shutdown was staffing, more so than some of the spread. I mean, there was high numbers of cases, but we had high numbers of teachers out, whether it was either because they were quarantined or they had COVID or some other factor of personal days, et cetera. Last year our threshold was pretty low, I would say, looking over at Paul, was probably 10 to 12 teachers. This year we've been able to handle a lot more, and that is really in large part due to our teachers willing to cover other people's classes, et cetera. So a big kudos to our teachers at the high school and the junior high. I think it's the same way. Is that fair? Fair. Josh, you were there. Fair? Yeah. Sorry. So 23 was, yeah, so we were up to, yeah.
So it is clear, at least to me, that up and down this dais here of board members, that we're all in favor of getting masks off of our children. It's just a matter of date. And we sound like we disagree up here. We sound like that to the public, but we really agree that we want to get the masks off. There's nobody at this table that says anything different. So.
Now, certainly, as I said before, things have changed in terms of the quarantine regulations, and I think we can keep kids in school much better now than we could 2 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what is decided in the next vote, the change in quarantine policy and the decision to not remove masks, but simply to say we're strongly recommending, we're not going to mandate, puts a lot of burden on our parents. Our parents really have to keep an eye on their kids. If you're sick, if you have symptoms, please keep them home. Keep them home. Make sure they get better. Don't send them to school. That's really going to be an important part of how we make this work, this transition successful. Any further comment? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
No.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. We're going to move on to item number 2, which is the approval to the addendum to the treasurer's contract. We'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments?
I have some comments. One of the challenges the school board has is how to effectively evaluate our 2 direct employees, the superintendent and the treasurer. Board members are not in the offices. It's hard for us to know what is truly happening. And during my time on the board, we've tried several different approaches, and we continue to work to refine and enhance that process. We should be evaluating these people in July of each year. But as we searched for a better way to complete this process, we fell behind. A couple months ago, we decided to hire a professional HR firm to conduct a leadership assessment of these 2 important people. And based on the results of that assessment, as vice president of the board, I had the pleasure of coordinating Mr. Rabe's review. The assessment shows that what the board sees from Mr. Rabe is only a fraction of how valued and effective he is in our district. In fact, he was described as the model of a leader. He is ethical, his integrity is above reproach, he's a teacher leader, patient, intelligent, knowledgeable, humble, the type of leader organizations hope they can attract. I'm so grateful for your service and your commitment to our district, Mr. Rabe, and I'm proud to support this 4% raise, which is the percentage received by other exceptional employees this year. I also apologize that this was so late. although it wasn't as late as last year, so at least we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you.
I certainly second all of Andrea's comments. I think we have a great treasurer, and we really appreciate his service here.
I like the description of teacher leader for him, because I definitely see that. And I also think he's very humble, and hope in the next year we'll be able to see more celebration of how strong the department is, because there's a lot of good things that happen there. And I think as a district as a whole, we aren't always great about celebrating our students and some of the achievements that that happen here too. But I hope Mr. Ray will be able to share his department's successes as well.
And when I echo everything everybody said. When I came in on this board, I had seen financial reports. I'd had them explained to me somewhat, but I have gotten one amazing tutorial from this man. I've been on the finance committee for the last 2 years, and I learned something new every day from him. What he does is he makes us all more effective. Emily and I are both on that committee, and he makes us very effective with his leadership and with his teaching skills. And I wish we could figure out a way to get him to pop a button off his shirt, but I don't think that's ever going to happen with Brian. Brian is just a wonderful person to deal with, and he does a great job.
And he's very humble about it.
And he is very humble.
Thank you all very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, well deserved. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. And right back to you.
Thank
Treasurer
you.
Brian Rabe.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is motion to approve the board reports for the month ending October 31st, 2021.
Motion to approve the board reports for the month ending October 31st, 2021. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second.
Just a couple of items to point out. We are starting to see an increase compared to last year in tuition payments from all-day kindergarten. Obviously, with kids coming back in school, we are seeing that increase. A couple items which we'll kind of talk about when we get to the 5-year forecast with the changing of the state formula, how they're recording certain items as far as tuition. And we'll get into that a little bit in more detail when we get to the forecast. We did end the month with a little over $47 million in the bank, and we had $31,000 in interest earned on the month.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Next item is recommendation to dispose of a 2005 Chevy van.
Okay, the item on the agenda everybody's been waiting for. We need a motion to dispose of a 2005 Chevy van.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the 2005 Chevy van?
That's before it disposes of itself.
Yeah, this is the old special ed vans that they use. The athletics use them some. We did replace both of those this year with new vans, so we do have someone who's interested in purchasing one, so we need to dispose of it first, then we'll turn around and sell this.
And right now, the prices are up, apparently, right?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Next item is a resolution to the county auditor to levy collection of taxes.
Woo-hoo.
Motion to approve the following resolution as presented relating to county auditor to levy collection of taxes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Obviously, with the election last Tuesday and the passage of the bond issue, this resolution will go to the county auditor, simply asking him to start collecting taxes on that levy, the approval of that levy.
And remind me again when we'll see the district will get their first check from that
Right.
18 months?
No.
Not that
So
long.
it's February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the first collection will begin in February.
One of the main reasons I got on this board was to try to get a middle school built for this district. didn't work out prior to me being on the board. We listened to the community. We did a great job, I think, listening to the community, and the community supported it. They knew what was coming. This is what they asked for. 54 to 46 in Milford on a vote for anything is a huge mandate, and I am so thankful for the taxpayers of this district to have enough faith in this and know that it's very badly needed and we need to get on with things, and it's an exciting time here. It really is. I was over at the junior high today with Mr. Ham for the Veterans Day celebration, and teachers are just bouncing off the walls. They can't wait, and we go, oh, it's going to be like 3 or 4 years here before you get it. They're ready now. They are so excited about it. So
They're bouncing off the walls because there's no room to walk in the hallways with all the kids.
That's another part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I too would like to thank the community. This middle school is sorely needed, very welcomed, and we really appreciate the support. Look forward to a fantastic building process and having a school that is really going to benefit our students and the community.
Okay. No further comment? We'll roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
And Mr. Reed, may I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Could we take a couple-minute break? Before the 4th.
Yeah, we're just going to pause, and I think I know why, so I won't ask. Just a couple minutes. Thanks, folks. Thank you. We're going to move on to our item 5? Item 4, sorry, I've got it blocked out. Item 4, back to our treasurer, Brian Rabe.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion on this, I did a presentation on the 5-year forecast, which we'll go through before we ask for our motion. So the 5-year forecast, we are required by law to do this in the state of Ohio. We're required to do it once in May and again in November. 5-year forecasting is also considered a best practice from the GFOA. When you take a look at the forecast only deals with our general fund. So if you look at some of our reports, you'll notice there's several other funds. This only deals with the general fund, our general operating accounts. There is a 3-year actual worth of history and then 5 years worth of forecasted data, along with assumptions behind where the numbers come from. When looking at revenues, number of items that we look at that are included on the forecast that go into the general fund: real estate taxes, funding that we receive from the state, interest on investments, TIF payments, tuition payments, and pay to participate fees. To go into these a little bit more detail, real estate taxes. Real estate taxes in Claremont County did go through a reappraisal in 2020, which were collected in this past year, in year 2021. The district did receive additional funding on the inside millage of that increase. So the inside millage would be roughly 3.3%. What we also saw as a result of when COVID hit, we did see an increase in the number of delinquencies in our real estate taxes back in 2020. However, the 2 payments that we've received here in 2021, we have seen an increase in the collection of those delinquency taxes. So those folks who fell behind in their taxes are becoming whole again, making the district whole again in those taxes. The state funding, right now, this is the biggest question mark that we have. So during the biennial budget that was passed by the state back in the summer, that covers the fiscal year 21, covers fiscal from July of 21 through June of 23. The state completely revamped the way school districts are funded. With that, it put in place a new funding formula. At this time, what we were told, because of the intricacies of that formula, they were originally going to give us the details behind that in October. Because there's so many changes to it, they're now telling us that won't be completed until December. So right now, everything that we're receiving from the state is based upon estimates, but we don't know what the details behind those numbers are. So hopefully in December, they're able to figure that out. We're able to see where the numbers are being driven from. But however, one big change that the state did make is regarding some tuition payments. The first one being open enrollment. So Milford does have open enrollment. So to put this in, we received roughly about $1 million in years past from students from outside the district that were open enrollment within the district. We also see the reverse. We saw students, Milford students, who are in open enrollment in other districts to the tune of about $500,000. The way this was recorded in the past is the $1 million for open enrollment students that were coming in, we saw that online, all other operating revenues. On the flip side, there was an expenditure on the purchase service side for the $500,000. When they changed the funding formula, what the state decided is you're only going to have to report the difference, which is about $500,000, and it's going in a different line. It's going in the state funding line. So when we look at some of the reports, the numbers are going to look significantly different, basically because the state moved how things need to be recorded.
Ryan, may I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but.
No, you're fine.
So with that, are you going to be able to figure out the 2 actual line items?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you'll
we
still
did.
be able to communicate that to the board?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, they'll still give us the reports of who's in, who's out. It's just that when you record it, you only record the net
Great.
difference.
Okay,
One of the other items that they looked at, which is a big change, is in the community school and the John Peterson Scholarship. The John Peterson Scholarship is a scholarship for special ed students that go outside the district. Typically what had happened in the past is the school, Milford was given revenue from the state for these students on the state funding side. On the expenditure side and the purchase services, we were expensing those costs that were going out to the community schools and the Peterson Scholarship. What they did in the state funding formula is the state took that completely out of the district, and they're funding that completely on their own in a different program. So the way we looked at it is when you look at the community schools and the John Peterson, there was about $1.2 million in revenues that were coming on the state side, which are gone. However, there's a $1.2 million expenditure in purchase services on the expenditure side that is now gone. So the numbers look a little funny if you're comparing year to year because the state has moved things around in how they fund things. Along with the state funding, when you look at the history over the past couple of years, due to COVID in 2020, the state reduced us $1.2 million, and in 21 it was the $561,000 reduction in 21. There is no, those COVID reductions are not in the formula currently. In the state funding item is also casino revenue that we receive from casino revenue. Last year, we did see a fall in casino revenue. Of the 2 payments that we do receive in the fiscal year, the very first payment we've received so far is actually the highest we've ever received, even non-COVID years. So obviously, people are headed back to the casinos. The last item that's included in the state funding is catastrophic cost. Catastrophic cost is additional funding from the state for special ed students that are high expenditure students. The way catastrophic works is if a student's over a certain dollar amount, we can apply to the state for additional funding. The state puts together a pool of money, and depending on how many districts access that fund depends on what percentage of money we get back. So that is also recorded in the state funding as well. We kind of talked about all other operating revenue, which includes manufacturing homes, tuition for foster place students, interest income. We do have the TIFs with both Miami and Union Township that are included in this number, as well as Medicaid reimbursements. If you're looking at the history, obviously the open enrollment is a big factor in that reduction, but we're also seeing interest income starting to fall. Simply, interest rates are where they're at compared to they were in years past, so we're not earning as much as we had in the past on our investments. This is just a snapshot of the overall revenues from last year to give you an idea. 58% of all revenues for the district are generated from local property taxes and rollback in homestead from the state. 32% is from the state funding formula, which is related to the students. And then we also see 10% related to other income. Again, that's the TIFs, that's the interest income and so forth. This is the 5-year forecast, what's projected over the next 5 years. You can see some of those numbers. The unrestricted grants and aid and the restricted grants and aid, those are the items that come from the state. We did flatline that for right now. Reason being is when they put in the new funding formula, the projection was that it was going to be a phase-in over a 6-year period. The original projections from the state is Milford would receive an additional $350,000 when it was fully phased in. However, when they did the biennial budget, they only guaranteed that phase-in for 2 years. So we don't know what's going to happen in year 3 through 6 just yet. So that's the reason for we flat funded it. Also, we don't know what the details behind that formula is, so we wanted to hold off on that. Looking at the expenditure side of things, so expenditures, obviously employees being our biggest expenditure. We do, when we do the projections, we do look at our current staffing levels and assume the same staffing levels. We are currently in the second of a 4-year contract with the teachers union and the classified staff. So we were able to project that out. Employee benefits obviously is also related to employees. There's two types of employee benefits that we look at. There's the state and federal mandates. Federal mandate being the Medicaid, state mandate being the retirement system. Those are all directly tied as a percentage of a salary. The other benefit items that we look at is the voluntary benefits, the health insurance, the dental insurance. We did receive, beginning January 1 of this year, we saw a 0.3% increase in healthcare, which is phenomenal. And we also saw a decrease in our dental rates. However, you know, when we look at years past, when we were in the 12 and the 9% range, getting a 0.3 is very beneficial. However, you know, going through the projections, we did project that we would continue at the 10%. Being in a consortium, we obviously hope that continues to fall. Purchase services, we'll talk about in a little bit, but part of the big item in purchase services is transportation from Peterman, as well as any type of utilities. These are services that we contract out for. You have supplies and materials. This is going to be your textbooks. This is going to be the paper that's in the schools. Capital outlay, these are items that are over $1,000, so you're looking at high item technology items, such as the smart boards, as well as large furniture purchases. And then fees is the big fee that we have is there is a fee from the county auditor's office for them to collect the taxes. They take a percentage of the taxes, so there is that fee. I mentioned purchase services. I just kind of want to go over this a little bit because you'll notice if you look at the forecast, there is a big upswing over the past 2 years. It kind of falls off this year, and then it dramatically falls off beginning next year. And the reason is over the past couple years, we did a number of major capital projects within the district. We replaced the HVAC at the pool. We redid the high school bleachers. Last summer, we did the Mulberry and McCormick roofs. This past summer, we did Pattison and Meadowview. The Pattison and Meadowview, the majority of that roof, the cost of that roof project, it will actually hit this fiscal year. So that's the main reason why it's up this year. And then we talked about the tuition. Those are big fluctuations that will bring down purchase services this year compared to where we were last year. And then last year with COVID and the quarantining, we did see a significant increase in our cost of our substitutes. So obviously, this year we haven't seen that. You know, we still have the quarantine of the teachers, but not to the level that we saw last year. So those items are all gradually coming off of the purchase services and reflected in the 5-year forecast. Well, that didn't come over quite right, did it? We'll kind of go over it. This is looking at the expenditures from last year. 72% of the expenditures from last year are a result of salaries and benefits, 23% as a result of purchase services, 3% was supplies and materials, and then capital outlay and other expenditures accounted for 1%. This is what is projected over the 5-year forecast. So as you can see, items are continuing to grow over time. You'll notice the big drop off in purchase services from 15 million down to 14 million, and then a steady increase from there. So there's the big drop off in that area. But obviously, as things get more expensive, inflation, obviously expenses are going to continue to rise. So as we look at it, you'll notice the 2 line charts at the top. The blue line represents the revenues. As you can tell, revenues is kind of pretty flat. The red line is the expenditures, so there is that gradual decline year after year in expenditures. And you'll notice that crossing point. That crossing point is when we get into what's referred to as deficit spending. This is the point in time where you're spending more money in a given fiscal year than you're actually collecting. We did cross that line last fiscal year. Now that we've crossed that line, we'll stay above that line. We'll stay in that deficit spending. So when you look at the line graph at the bottom, the green graph, that is the actual cash balance. So as we were taking in more revenues over expenditures, that cash balance continued to grow, but we're at the point where it's started to flatline, and that cash balance will start to drop. So this is the point where we need to look at additional revenue, additional expenditure adjustments, so on and so forth.
Does this take into consideration the ESSER money?
It does not. It only
Okay.
looks at general fund money. So
Okay,
yeah,
but if we apply ESSER money to general fund,
if you pull certain things out of the general fund and charge it to ESSER, it's a
so
one-time savings.
would that have an impact here?
From what we're using it for, not anymore. We used it for, last year we had the additional Eagle Online teachers that we used the ESSER money for. We also had additional bus routes that we had last year because of the student spacing. We did account for that. We did have to purchase some additional technology for students being at home, laptops and such. Some of that would have been paid out of the general fund. We were able to transfer that down to the ESSER fund. But at this point with the ESSER fund, the majority of it is going to be used for the learning loss program that's currently ongoing. And then there's a larger chunk that's sitting there. If it's not needed, will be used for, it's projected to be used for HVAC repairs. So those are, when we look at the HVAC, that could be something that we would have had to taken out the general fund at some point in time, but with the ESSER funds, we're able to use that to make some of those improvements.
Because if you're able to use your ESSER funds against the general funds, you kind of go on with that false sense of security, hey, we're not too bad, we're not too bad.
And then it drops
boom,
off,
you
yeah.
drop off the cliff.
That's kind of, we kind of, when we talked about the ESSER funds, it was because it's one-time money, you kind of want to use it for one-time expenses. Stuff that, you know, you don't go out and bring in 5 teachers and then when that money's gone, then you got to switch them over to the general fund. We tried to stay away from that concept as much as we could.
Okay, so you're minimizing the cliff, but we're seeing just a gradual decay here.
Correct.
Or I guess.
Correct.
I guess you could call that gradual.
Right. Yeah, at the end of the 5-year forecast, which would be 26, we were projecting at the end of 26, we would be looking at about 2 months worth of cash balance, days cash. So you're looking at about 60 days.
So best practices is to have 3 months in the bank, right?
Yeah, 2 to 3 months would be best practice.
So somewhere around 25 is when a levy would be needed.
Right.
Before any kind of other changes are made to spending, et cetera.
Yeah, we'll have to continue to look at it.
Yeah.
One of the things with it is, with the way we are funded, the big jumps in revenues that we receive occur when income, or when property tax is collected. So we see the big spike in revenues in February and then August or September. So when you look at the cash balance at the end of June 30th, you want to make sure you have enough to at least get you to that point in time where you're going to collect that big jump in real estate tax. Because after we get that jump, every month that cash balance declines and then you get that big jump. So when you look at that June 30th, you got to make sure that you at least can get to that point.
Any other comments or questions? Okay,
All
we'll
I can
need,
say is that's why we have Mr. Rabe to
Yes.
analyze all these details.
yes. We'll need a motion to approve the 5-year forecast as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Since we've already hit commentary, I'll ask for roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Nice
Thank
job on the 5-year forecast.
Thank you.
And your team, whoever's helped put this together. I know it's an important one every 6 months.
Yes, it is.
Moving on to superintendent business. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. First item for your information is a land swap with the Great Oaks. The next slide. Thank you. So each of you, you do have a copy of our current lease agreement with the Great Oaks. And for the members in the audience looking up at the slide, the purple bluish area is our transportation garage, et cetera. This is where all of our buses are located. The Great Oaks system owns that property. We lease that property from them. It is important to note that they have a 90-day turnaround. So they could tell us today that they want the property back, and in 90 days we have to get off of the property. We have nowhere to put those buses currently. So they have approached us. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you, sir. This is sort of the timeline of when Milford and the Oaks became partners in this lease agreement. So January of 2002 was our original lease agreement for them, about 5 acres. 14, the lease was amended $1 per year for 5 years to go through 2019. And so again, you see that 90-day notice to terminate with or without cause. And then it was again amended in 16 for the additional acreage of 7.84. And then they approached us in June, once again, to talk about a land swap. And so this evening really is just informational that the Oaks would like to, can you actually go back to that other slide? Thank you, sir. They would like to make a land swap with the district. The green area is behind Mulberry Elementary. I think it's important to note that it does limit the green space outside of Mulberry Elementary. However, I'm having conversations with Harry Snyder, the CEO of the Great Oaks. There would be an easement in the agreement that would allow us to continue to use that property. We currently do have a trail on that property created by Mulberry Elementary teachers and Eagle Scouts. So there is a trail there. We also have bluebird boxes. We did present that at a board meeting last year, I do believe. And so we'll still have the opportunity to use that. If you'll also notice towards the bottom of the screen, actually, I'm going to call your attention to the green section, the point of the triangle at the top, where it looks like there's just a lot of dirt. Well, that's their large heavy equipment program that they have at the Oaks. In talking to Harry Snyder, asked for an additional easement to potentially use some of their property at the bottom of their, behind the library, would allow us to maybe potentially build a trail. And so Harry agreed to potentially put that easement in. It would also give the heavy equipment program, their students, some of our students are in that program, an opportunity is a real life experience to work with us, certainly the Mulberry teachers and students to maybe build a trail there as well. So that's a possibility down the road. So I'm not sure there are a whole lot of questions. I mean, we don't have a lot of options at this point, to be truthful. They made it pretty clear that they have 90, they can invoke that 90 days. And so they just want to make a land swap of 7.84 acres and make everybody whole.
This started with some non-adjacent property up at Laurel Oaks in Wilmington, and they swapped some land with the Clinton County Commissioners, and it was at that time that they began to look at this and something that would have to be resolved at some point in time, because it's not in perpetuity in terms of how long we can rent this property. So it just kind of cleans up the legal aspect of it.
It does, and also of note is that some of their new gas and water lines that they are running to the renovation also runs through that property, and so it would also make it clean. And currently it does run through some of the bus garage area, and so that creates an issue there. So they're running new water lines, et cetera, through that green shaded area as well. So again, would make it clean.
And the general intent of Great Oaks, I think, is not to do anything with that land currently, and we should be able to work out cooperation and obviously mutual use of that land.
Correct, Mr. Yaki. I think they've made it pretty clear that there's not an intention at this point. They have spent a lot of money currently on the renovations there, so I don't know that there is, a desire to do something in the very near future. But I also ask that, understanding that we having the easement and using the property, that we would have some pretty good notice so that we could get the bluebird boxes out, and that our, some of the other things that are on that trail. And so.
Well, and they did state that there would be a barrier, that they would create a barrier with a fence and a gate, so we would have to have access through that gate. They wanted to have some line determining their line of ownership.
And they would allow us to lock that gate, if you will. Not a chain link fence, some other type of gate, but they would allow us to lock that gate so that we can control access to and from there as well. So more to come. Certainly willing to answer any questions, but I will be bringing back to you an agreement of some sort that both sets of attorneys from both districts have had an opportunity to look at to be favorable to both. So next month I will bring this back to you for a vote. All right, thank you. The other informational item is a first reading of policy GCE. It is part-time and substitute professional staff employment. Senate Bill 1 was passed, which then allows districts to hire substitutes that are not necessarily holders of bachelor's degrees. They would still go through the same vetting process that they do now through the Hamilton County ESC and the sub-solutions that we use now for our substitutes. So they would go through the same process, same fingerprinting, background checks, et cetera. But this would allow us to use those employees.
Are we still getting substitutes fairly regularly? I know a lot of districts are really suffering from that.
Well, I will tell you that we are. Jenny Berkeley would tell you that September and October that was our best fill rate in forever, I believe. So we've done pretty well at Milford. Now, if you ask the teachers, sometimes not necessarily. So I think that there's been some times where they don't have coverage, and it's difficult. It's tough on them to give up their planned period or other things. But our staff has really stepped up this year, and they are doing that, and we're certainly appreciative of that. All right. Under other business policies for your approval, we have two policies, regulation IICA-R and JFCA-R.
We need a motion to approve the regulations 1 and 2 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion, comments? The field trips, basically, we've just taken that off of the responsibility of the board to approve some of these
correct
smaller field trips.
Yeah, so some of the issues that we've run in with COVID is that we've not been able to approve a field trip before we've had a board meeting, so we've had to pass, like we've allowed them to go, like for instance robotics or the ROTC program or softball, or water polo. I think water polo was one earlier this year. And so this allows me and or another person, Paul Daniels, to to approve those trips. And he doesn't really want to speak about policy, but he might have to get up and speak. But that's what it does. It allows us to make those decisions. We will always bring these to you in committee.
Yep.
We will always let you know the field trips that are outside, that are happening. We never bring stuff to you like the elementary schools going to the zoo. We don't bring those to you. Those are just things that we do. But certainly there's some field trips on the agenda this evening. Softball and robotics are on there. Those would just be discussed in committee in the future, and we would just approve those.
And on item 2, I think we had some public comment about these changes to the dress and grooming standards. And I'm guessing, Paul, you're going to address that?
Yeah, I'm going to let Paul talk about that since he did write something up about that.
Good evening. in the policy, in the regulation, excuse me, you'll notice that it was last adopted in 2014. We did ask our high school principal at the time, Josh Kaufman, and our elementary principals and junior high principals to take a look at the direction of our former superintendent at our grooming and dress code standards. Each year we bring to you student handbooks to approve. What is in the regulation currently that is marked out does not match the handbooks. So in 1819, when the dress code was amended, it was amended in the handbooks, which you board approve each year. It was not amended in the regulation. We did receive some emails this year. There were some struggles with some wear and items at the high school quoting the old regulation. We did seek guidance from our general counsel to make sure that we were good to go to match the regulation to the handbooks. His guidance was the handbooks, since they were board approved, are the dress and grooming standards. At a time necessary, he said you would update your regulation. The regulation is tied to the policy. We did receive one email this week, and I did spell that very scenario out. The question was also asked that as a board, you have mandated mask K6 and highly recommended 712. That wasn't in the dress code policy, but as the board discusses those items, we adjust and would not penalize a child for not being within the dress code when we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So we just felt with our general counsel and talking in committee, which this policy, you know, the dressing and grooming policy and the dressing and grooming regulation was brought to each committee for your review, but we just needed to get these to match. But what is board approved is the handbook, and that's really the green that you will see. And there was a comment this evening, and I'm probably stepping out of my lane, but I'm always, John's always, we're always happy to answer questions. Community members don't need to wait to a board meeting. We'd be happy to engage in conversation, but the new in green does spell out that any garment or attire containing, referencing, promoting, or glorifying alcohol, tobacco, drugs, gangs, violence, death, suicide, gore, and/or blood are strictly prohibited, which closely matches the red strikeouts. But this has been our dressing and grooming since 1819. Came out of many conversations, coffee chats, community engagement, teachers, parents. It just never got updated in the regulation. And regulations are read, they are not approved. Brian and I did a little research, unless they are regulations that we believe are required by Ohio Revised Code. And this one is not required by Ohio Revised Code. So it's just one reading.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. We'll now move on to our human resources business. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. We do have some items this evening under item G 1.1, job description for the admin secretary to human resources, asking for your approval.
Your motion to approve job description 1.1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under item G 1.2, job description, executive office manager and assistant to the superintendent.
Motion to approve job description item 1.2 as presented.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments?
Yes, I have comments. In this section, and this is going to be a little confusing because it crosses over a couple different areas, but we're being asked to approve this new job description and then vote on raises for 2 secretarial administrative assistant positions. At this point, I cannot support this new job description and its title change, as well as these raises. I'm going to go through my rationale now, even though they're kind of broken out. First, before I get started, I want to apologize to the two individuals in question here. My comments have nothing to do with either of them. Instead, I'm questioning the approach, knowledge, and philosophy put forward by our administrators. These changes were initially on the board agenda last month, but after I questioned them, they were removed. I don't know if other board members did as well, questioned them. I had hoped that the several discussions we had would mean that these were not brought to the board, but as they are on the agenda tonight, I must address the situation in a way for everyone to understand why I am voting against them. First, the new job description and title change, which we're getting ready to vote on now. Milford has always been a humble district. We have worked to avoid exalted titles. In an office with a relatively small number of administrators, I do not feel it's appropriate to be granting titles such as Executive Office Manager and Administrative Assistant to Superintendent. It adds no benefit. It's not a good look. When I initially questioned this, the superintendent immediately said, title was not a big deal. It could be changed. So I'm not sure why it's still on the agenda as Executive Office Manager and Administrative Assistant. Second, the raises. The title change will come with an 8% raise, and the administration is also recommending an 8% raise for the Administrative Assistant to Curriculum and Instruction and Technology. I had a long meeting to discuss these with our superintendent and assistant superintendent of HR. We had discussions in committee. In addition, I sought input from several different HR professionals to gain some perspective. Based on these conversations, some discussions with administrators regarding salary ranges this summer and in the past few weeks, couple months, and other work the board has recently completed over the past months with an HR firm, I see 3 issues with giving these raises right now. Number 1, it has become clear that our administrators do not understand the purpose and application of salary ranges. They're not using or managing the ranges properly, and they do not understand how years of experience come into play. I asked about an administrator receiving a raise that took them over their range, and I was told the ranges are just where people start, and their pay does not have to stay within the range, even though positions clearly have a minimum and maximum. I have asked to understand where our entire central office support staff is within their ranges, their years of experience, and their basic tasks. But I was told that this was not something that they were comfortable looking at. I feel strongly that we must have this information before giving any other raises outside the regular, or we risk creating pay inequities and resentment within our office culture. Number 2, I question our philosophy for granting increases in situations like this. Both of these people received raises in the summer. At the same time, all annual raises were given. Now, our administrators want to give them an additional 8% each to account for some additional duties they will be taking on. Yet other people in the office are taking on more responsibilities and not receiving extra pay. And all job descriptions include other duties as assigned, so no extra pay is given then. So, do our administrators now intend to increase compensation for every person who takes on an extra task? Third, I've been told that if we do not reallocate these tasks and give these raises, they will have to hire another person, which will cost more and be fiscally irresponsible. But someone has been doing the majority of this work already, and it is simply being reallocated to these positions. In addition, I've been told that the extra tasks are not a lot of work, and systems are becoming much more efficient and taking less time as Mr. Rabe implements new computer systems that replace a lot of paper systems. The fact that our administrators would suggest that they need another person without clear need being demonstrated is very disturbing to me. For these reasons, I do not feel it is appropriate to make these changes. Once again, I would like to stress that my feelings and comments have nothing to do with the specific people involved. One of our administrators suggested in committee that I was perhaps just picking on them, which to me simply highlights that it does not understand the need for additional HR development and analysis within our district and reinforces that we have a desperate need for more training. Once that training is done, if there are any kind of inequities, and these people need to be adjusted. I am sure that that will happen. Thank you.
Other comments? Just a couple questions. One is this process of, and we're really talking about a couple of areas here, was initiated because of a retirement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we are basically bringing in a person to handle some of those responsibilities and giving them more money to do that, and then we're hiring somebody else. The combined net of those two increases is a net savings to your administrative offices?
$7,618.97 net gain to our operations.
And is it also your responsibility to determine the efficiencies of this building in your administration in order to allocate assets to accomplish some of those objectives?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's all I have.
And I would like to say that it's great that we're saving money. We could be saving $17,600, whatever the number is. I just don't know of times when people are given extra tasks like this that are professed to be not very much, and yet given more money, especially when there isn't an understanding of where they are on the salary scale relative to everyone else in the office. And yes, it is definitely the superintendent and his staff's responsibility to do these things, but this is a board vote. So ultimately, it is our responsibility to decide if it's appropriate or not.
Other comments?
I think it's confusing to me, just the process of when positions are up. So in my job, the reviews are one time a year, and raises and promotions are another time of year. So I would like to see some, just going forward, some consistency about like what is our structure as far as, sometimes there might be a need in the middle of the year for some reason, and majority of raises or promotions happen in the spring, and then this happens in the fall or whatever. Just a more regular schedule, because otherwise it's a little bit whack-a-mole. I want to make sure that we're staffing how we need to be staffing and staffing appropriately.
Well, I think that's what precipitated this move, is that we're staffing in the way that we feel that we need to. And then speaking to ranges, I've consulted with Mr. Rabe. He has the same understanding as I do about how ranges work. It's a place to put someone. It's not where, that's not the only, the end point is not the highest salary they can get. That's his understanding. That's also been the understanding of prior superintendents that have been here at Milford. So we're just following past practice. If that's a practice that the board would like us to look at, then we can certainly look at that. But we're not doing anything different, and I want to be very clear about that.
Any other comments?
I just think that I'd like to see a laundry list of ranges so that we know. It's hard for us to sometimes to evaluate these things. In this particular case, you had 50 tasks divided up among 3 people. We put them in a bucket. We drew them out into some of them into different areas. Still have 3 people there, and it's a savings of $7,600. I just would like to, for me to know where this individual is in their pay range is, I think that's important for us to know that.
You'll have it
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Somebody that's at the top of the pay range, you either need to find them a more important job at a salary where they keep going, or they don't go, and that's difficult. I know that's not something that you do in a day. That's like turning the Queen Mary. I get it, but
You can have the salary ranges, and you can have where those people fall within those ranges. That's not an issue. We'll have that for you tomorrow. We have given out those salary ranges in the past. And then I think another thing to go back to about discussing people and their salary ranges, I think that comment was taken out of context. That was in reference to the academic side of the building versus the treasurer's side of the building. We don't get involved in the treasurer's side of the building, and what his employees do and where they fall on their ranges and their workload. And I think that's where the comment of not really comfortable talking about that, because that's not our area.
The HR portion of that has to be. There has to be an HR strategy across the board. I don't know exactly what has happened in the past because we have not had this situation. And I don't think we had people who were hitting the top of their ranges. So, you know, we need HR work. We really do.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Abstain.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes.
Under item 2, exempt approvals, G2A1, asking for your approval of, sorry, looking at the changes here. G2A1 would be the exempt resignation for Jen Schaefer.
Motion to approve the exempt recommendation A1 as presented. Need a motion?
Only on A1? I'm confused.
What we did at the beginning of the meeting is Andrea requested that we separate all of
Okay.
these out individually.
I
so
got
we
it.
need to
I
vote on them
remember.
individually.
I didn't mark my agenda
This,
accordingly.
and this sheet has them separate too that they gave us while we were gone.
I see.
That's what that is.
I see it.
Yes.
So this is G2A1. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments?
Just to clarify, I'll be voting no on this because I do not feel that this position should exist. Nothing to do with Jen. So.
Any other comment? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
I think I have to abstain since I abstained.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes.
Asking for your approval under G2B1, approval to hire the following Human Resources Administrative Secretary to replace Diane Hill, who is retiring. Number 1.
We need a motion to approve the exempt recommendation, item G2B1 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Asking for your approval under G2C1, salary change.
Need a motion to approve G2C1 as presented.
So moved.
So move.
We got a motion and a second?
Was there a motion?
There was.
Okay, second then.
Got a motion and a second. Comments?
It's hard to hear sometimes at the other end of the table.
This is the other raise that I referenced in my statement.
Other comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Abstain.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, administrative approvals, asking for your approval under G3A1, Jen Schaefer.
Motion to approve G381, administrative recommendations as presented. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
No.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Abstain.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes.
Under administrative approvals, G3B1, approval of the administrative contract for Paul Daniels.
Motion to approve administrator recommendations, item G3B1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments?
Yeah, I have some questions and comments. Again, sorry. I'm confused. Up until yesterday, there were 3 contracts on this portion of the agenda. 2 have magically disappeared. I'm on the Personnel Committee. I was not told why. I found out by looking at the agenda. The other 2 contracts were extensions. They actually did not renew next year. They were not renewing until mid-2023. But in committee, it was stressed that it was very important to get everyone on the same schedule. So don't understand why that changed. Not that it really matters. I did not support extending those contracts because I do not feel it is best practice to do that. And I also, once again, nothing to do with Mr. Daniels, but I do not support renewing his contract right now. As I've said, it's become clear that we need some HR work that must be addressed, and part of fixing our issues means that we ensure we're following best practices, which means we should not be voting on contracts this early. It's not standard practice to vote on an expiring contract 8 months in advance. I'm also curious, Mr. Daniels is not the only administrator whose contract is expiring next year, but he's the only one on the agenda tonight. So, why is Mr. Daniels on here? Is there a reason that he was chosen and others were not?
Yes, absolutely. Paul is deserving of a 3-year contract at this time. We certainly do not want to lose Paul. Paul's an exemplary employee, probably the best curriculum person in Southwest Ohio, if not the state. We had a discussion back in August about making Paul our chief academic officer, as he has done phenomenal work in that curriculum area. That would align with other great districts that are certainly part of the Battelle for Schools Network. And so we did table that title change per your request. So we did that. And I'm asking the board to approve Paul's contract because we don't want to lose Paul, and that's why he's on here this evening.
I'm certainly not saying that I think we should lose Paul or not renew Paul's contract, but it is early and a new board is coming in.
It is. And it is practice and standard for other districts to do this as well. It's not out of the norm for us to do this.
We would have in essence an administrator that would be not being under contract. They're starting to look for new jobs
Potentially.
now after the first of the year, finishing that up by April. And I just think it may be a little bit unfair to hold back on that timetable until May or June when there is no place available at that point. I think we need to get out in front of this. We've got a good individual that does good work, and I think we need to get him under contract.
And I don't think it's usually May or June. I think it's earlier than that, but not this early.
We've already had one debate this evening on time and when things should happen, so I think we're just...
Yeah, I think it should be noteworthy, too, that our delay in processing our 2 hires, our superintendent, our treasurer, sort of pushed back several things. I think anytime you get into the final year of a contract with a key employee, you want to find a way to do that. I thought we had initially were going to approve his extended contract in August, but I think because of the delay with getting the evaluations done for our superintendent and treasurer, I think that was part of the delay from what I understand. Listen, one of the core things to have a good school district is you have to have a very, very good curriculum guy, and we've got one that you do not want to let go. And you can complain about a whole bunch of other things with the school district, not this area, not here. This is the guy, and he deserves a 3-year contract. Hearing no other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Not saying you do not deserve the contract, but just not now, no.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 4, certified approvals, asking for your approval of item A.
Motion to approve certified recommendations, item A1 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under number 5, classified approvals, we have items A through E.
F or F? E or F?
I'm sorry, F. I did not see that one. I
Motion-
apologize. A through F.
Motion to approve classified recommendations A through F as presented.
So move.
Oh, second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 6, athletic extracurricular contract recommendations for the 21-22 school year. I have items A through D.
Motion to approve athletic extracurricular recommendations, items A through D as presented.
So moved.
Second. Oh, second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 7, volunteer approval, item A 1 through 11.
Motion to approve volunteer recommendations, item A 1 through 11 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item H, curriculum and instruction, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. We do have some field trips for your approval, as we discussed earlier. These would be in the future just discussed in committee. We would approve them, and then you would know about them. We would just not approve them in a regular board meeting.
And we have to approve tonight because we just had
Tonight
the first
we do.
reading.
Yes, sir.
So we'll have to, okay.
Yes, sir. So under item H1A, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are robotics and also a varsity softball trip. Asking for your approval.
Motion to approve field trips A 1 through 4 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comment?
And most of these are not funded with board funds, correct?
Correct.
Transportation.
The robotics, they take care of themselves, and then the girls softball would pay for it themselves. Correct.
Are the robotics teams going to leave trophies for anyone else? They're going to bring them all home?
They will be bringing a lot of hardware home as well.
They will.
Yes, we do. We do great work with our robotics. Those folks do good stuff.
Any other comment?
Should we enjoy our last field trip vote? Oh, it's not. We get one more because we still have to approve. Next month, we'll still get to approve field trips. No, this is it.
This is it.
This is it.
That was the final
This is
reading.
it, yeah.
Okay.
You were there.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. We will move into our concluding items for our Board of Education meeting this evening, which starts with our second public participation. Would anyone like to speak?
Rebecca Bourne?
I actually wish I had more time because I wanted to address some of the other things happening. Rebecca Bourne, 1106 Fox Run Road, Milford. I'm struggling to face you tonight because the deeper I go into understanding your underhanded actions, I'm appalled and sickened. You know the adage, follow the money, and that's what I did. And I discovered the setup and the doublespeak of the government and the slippery ways you've handled us. Within the document about assumptions used to create the forecast, I read this statement. The district was fortunate to receive additional state funding. This increase in district revenue has permitted the district to maintain a positive cash flow. And it's interesting, when I saw the PowerPoint online, there was a final slide that showed that in 20 and 21, there was an increase in cash flow. And you may ask, where did those funds come from? The district received $828,120 from ESSER. Now let me flesh this out for you. Within the guidelines for using ESSER, I found this statement. The plan must contain, at a minimum, the extent to which and how the funds will be used to implement prevention and mitigation strategies that are, to the extent practicable, consistent with CDC guidance. When they accepted the funds that helped their cash flow, they accepted this requirement, and they knew they were going to mandate masks, social distancing, and contact tracing. Again, from the ESSER requirements, I quote, they must engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders, including students and families. So you have to have those meaningful conversations, but the translation is this: play like you hear them and do it. Another quote, the contents of this document do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the public in any way, unquote. How laughable is that? How bound do you feel? Another quote, interventions it implements will respond to the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of all students. That sets the requirements for social emotional learning, a seemingly innocent and worthy teaching, but SEL is not what it presents to be. It is about restorative justice, guiding our kids how to feel, and includes the concept of equity. It is a partner to indoctrinating kids in the politically approved agenda. So let's mask the kids so they can't breathe, can't see full faces, and indoctrinate them in how they should feel. Then we cripple their bodies with a jab that has a spike protein that can cause long-term damage, and we have control over the next generation.
30
and
seconds.
The school system is using this to accomplish it. This board and administration managed their cash flow, and they sold out our kids into slavery, all under the guise of protection. They supplemented the expense of their teacher salaries, calling it a stipend, and pretended they were listening to us and compromised our kids. This board had first an obligation to honor their oath to uphold the Constitution. You did not do that. And secondly, this board had a moral obligation to protect and not abuse our kids. My affidavit process is not done. I have a string of unrebutted affidavits that are now truth. I'm learning how to go to court with my constitutional rights, and this will be overturned, and you will be found liable.
Don Wegman.
My name is Don Wegman, 8330 Ashton Court. I just have questions. I know you guys can't answer, and I understand that. And I just, maybe I'm an idiot, and I'll go ahead and lay that right out there. But the research I do does not support what you're doing. You're not medical professionals. You asked, Miss Emily, you asked, where's the data coming from? You just asked that in the meeting. Everyone's heard it. You work at Children's. What do you mean, where's the data coming from? You better know it like the back of your hand. It's where you work. So I'm confused. So close contact. So we're running this whole narrative in this country right now, and I'm a veteran, and I have fought, and my father fought, and his father fought for this, the Constitution of the United States of America. You didn't mention it tonight. You didn't mention tonight the freedoms that are inside of this book right here. We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about the Nuremberg Code. It's not being mentioned. Unless you're a medical professional, you can't give medical advice to people. It's against the law. Masks are not passed legislation. Vaccines, they're not approved. One of them got approved for next year, but vaccines, you're pushing a medical device, which is the vaccine or the mask, that are not approved. Guys, think about this. Well, I don't understand. You're educated people. I give you full credit on that. Who owns the patent to cover the coronavirus? Anybody know? Bill Gates owns a patent. You can't own a patent on something that's coming natural unless they made it. We all know this. EUA is for single vac only, BioNTech. That's it. It's an EUA. This is not approved, and you're pushing this. Shame on you. FDA it won't be done with clinical trials till 2023. If it's in clinical trials, can it be approved? No. And you work at Children's. I don't understand. COVID has never been isolated. They've tried. They can't isolate COVID. Therefore, a vaccine doesn't match. Mr. Spicer, you're not with a mask right now. Obviously, you don't go with that. The ladies are with a mask right now. But I see you violating the codes tonight. You shook the kids' hands after touching the mic, touching the papers, touching your mask. Why don't you throw the mask away at the end of the night? Why do you wear the same mask? According to mask code, I'm an MCI specialist, mass casualty incident. I'm letting you guys know across the board, you're violating every rule to spreading the disease. Guys, you're not sick. You're supposed to be dead. You don't have a mask on. I've never worn a mask.
30 seconds.
I'm not dead. It doesn't make sense. So all the things that I want to say out there that when you break down what is happening right now, where are our freedoms in this? We're gonna tell you can come back to school. You costed my daughter a softball season. They were going to state. You did that, not Fauci, not Biden, who don't even know where he's at. We're dealing with you. Make the informed decision. Do your job. You're not doing your job. What's the data? Oh, where's the data come from? Well, who's this? Come on, guys.
3 minutes.
It's a clown show. Don't do that. They're literally across the board. When you are a professional doing this job, please do it. Mr. Spicer, I applaud you for not having a mask on.
Sir, you reached 3
applaud you
minutes.
guys.
You reached 3
Absolutely.
minutes.
So I want to leave you with one more thought. Study the Constitution. I'm going to leave it with you.
Amanda Fox.
Amanda Fox, 6331 Lake Ridge Court, Loveland, Ohio. I just would like to take this moment to, I'm sure tonight was crazy and it was obviously an oversight in the discussion when we talked about it, but I would like to give credit where credit is due in all areas, in regards to the bond that we passed as a community. I would like to personally thank the PAC leadership, Ryan Smith, Morris I'm going to mess up his name, sorry, Morris Ledzinski, Jennifer Naylor, Taney Shondell, Jocelyn Watson, Michael Wilson, Susan Apt. Their tireless efforts that they put into this campaign is amazing. I'd also like to thank Misty Getz, the principal at the junior high, her teachers and staff, and of course the administration at the board office. I'm sure one of those members knocked on your door, put a flyer in your mailbox, texted you, called you. They worked tirelessly, and I think that those groups of people need to be recognized tonight. So on behalf of the parents in this community that will benefit, my child will benefit from the new building, I would like to say thank you to those people. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, Amanda. They did a fantastic job, and yeah, it's just a lot going on, but you said it very well. They worked tirelessly, they did a great job, and clearly their efforts paid off. Thanks for saying that.
Okay, we're going to close our second public comment and move on to item number 2, which is the announcement of our next regular board meeting, which is December 16th, 2021, right here at 1099 State Route 131, Milford, Ohio 45150. Any discussion amongst our board members this evening?
Yeah, I do have one.
You would do that, wouldn't you?
I would do that, yes, I would do that. We've had some good news here lately in the district. We passed a bond, wonderful, everybody supported it. The PAC did a great job of getting the word out and explaining the issues to people that maybe didn't understand it, but I think over the course of a couple of years we've helped the community understand, and they've certainly given us their feedback. But this morning I got a little bit more good news that I'm going to go public with right now. And no, I'm not leaving the board, but and I'm not pregnant, but yesterday evening at a athletic booster board meeting, The athletic boosters agreed to fully fund, that is 100% fully fund, the turf over at Charity Lucas Field. And the contract is coming down the pike from the Maumee Bay Company, who they're contracting with. They're the same people that did the great job on the turf at the stadium. And if you see somebody from that booster group, please take the time to go up and shake their hand. That field costs $733,000 to get in. And we have to have that before we start tearing up all the other practice fields for a new school. So it will be in, if everything goes well, it will be available for play on the fall, and it will be available for soccer first, obviously, but also for boys and girls lacrosse and for football and for marching band. So it's going to cover a lot of territory. When I came on this board, one of the things that I talked about was trying to find creative ways of funding stuff. These guys have done it. Say thank you to them when you see them. They do a great job, and nobody really knows who they are. They have a couple events a year that you all go to. One is the craft show, which is coming up on the first Saturday of December, which is the 4th of December. If you've ever been there, I don't need to tell you anything. It's just, it's all about Christmas, and that's a big fundraiser for them. So hopefully you'll support that. Those people do a lot of work for this district. They've done over $3 million with this project in things that the school district did not have to pay for. So please say thank you to them. They're a great group of individuals, and they deserve our thanks. So
our booster groups have done a great job for many years to come, many years in the past, and we should prepare a list again of all those things and the cost of those things that have been donated by the boosters group, because it's phenomenal.
You know, I have it from 1999 to 2019. I kept track of every expenditure that was for a brick and mortar or a T-shirt or a pair of shoes for kids. So
It's been a lot. I think some people in the community think the board and public funding funded some of those projects when they did not.
yeah, tennis courts is another good example. That was all privately funded. The turf at the stadium was all privately funded. So they do great things. Yeah, I kept you an extra 2 or 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
No, I'll just echo, obviously, priority one was to get that middle school passed, get it built. We really needed to do that. We learned a lot from 2019. I'm proud of how we came back and got it right this time. And certainly getting the turf soccer field, I don't know if people realize not only the footprint of that building back where they're looking to put it, but the staging area required to build that building is going to take all of those practice areas. And you can't do anything with the current junior high until you get the other one built. So it's not like we can add fields up there. So the turf is going to give us more, you can use them during rain, during evenings, they're lit fields. It's going to really help our athletic teams be able to train and practice. So that being said, oh, sorry.
I got a few items I wrote down, if I may. First and foremost, there is a vaccine clinic hosted here. We are not running it. That's run through the Claremont County Public Health. For anybody that wants it, that's parent choice. Veterans Day at the high school, just to reiterate, that is tomorrow. It is a planned event. It's been advertised all week, so it's not that we forgot them. Can we stop the narrative that we don't like America or our veterans here? We love them. It's obvious right here. Amanda Fox, talked about the bond thank yous. I wrote them down. I'd certainly like to thank the Yes for Milford group. You named the names, but certainly my central office team who gave up Saturdays, Brian himself, his team, just the tireless effort to make the bond happen. It's been a long time coming, so I'm grateful for everyone that was a part of that. I'd like to also echo Mr. Ray being a teacher. I did state that Brian is a teacher. He makes difficult concepts of school funding, and he breaks them down for us, and so I'm grateful for you as well. So thank you so much. I think that's it.
Okay. It's that time of the evening. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I didn't think so. Roll call, please.
Mr. Yaki?
15 minutes. Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Good night, everybody.